infamous first light. Chapter 1. Neon Dreams. The neon sign flickers, its sickly green glow painting shadows across Abigail's face. She hunches deeper into her worn hoodie, willing herself to disappear into the grimy alley wall. Seattle's night air carries the tang of rain and rot, a fitting perfume for the city's underbelly. Across the street, a group of men laugh, the sound sharp and dangerous. Abigail's fingers twitch and she forces them still. The power inside her pulses, eager for release, a caged lightning begging to arc free. She grits her teeth. Not here. Not now. Fetch! The whisper comes from her left, and Abigail turns to see her brother Brent materialize from the shadows. His face is gaunt, eyes fever-bright in the neon glow. Coast is clear, let's move. They slip from the alley, two more wraiths in a city full of ghosts. Abigail matches her stride to Brent's, noting the slight limp in his gait. The wound from last week's close call hasn't fully healed. She swallows the guilt rising in her throat. If she were stronger, faster with her powers, Brent wouldn't have to, no. She shakes the thought away. Dwelling on what-ifs is a luxury they can't afford. They weave through back streets and abandoned lots, the Seattle skyline a jagged silhouette against the night sky. The Space Needle looms in the distance, a monument to a brighter future that never quite arrived. Abigail's gaze is drawn to the pulsing billboards and strobing club signs. The city's lifeblood of light calls to her, and she feels the familiar itch beneath her skin. You good? Brent's voice cuts through her reverie. He's noticed her distraction, the slight tremor in her hands. Abigail nods, not trusting her voice. Brent's concern is a warm weight, both comforting and suffocating. She loves him for it, even as she resents needing his protection. They reach their destination, an abandoned building on the outskirts of the Denny Triangle. Plywood covers most of the windows, but Brent leads them to a hidden entrance, revealing a space they've made as close to home as they dare. Inside, the musty air is a relief after the damp night. Abigail sinks onto a threadbare couch, springs groaning in protest. Brent busies himself with their meagre supplies, laying out a meal of convenience store sandwiches and slightly bruised apples. Eat, he says, tossing her a sandwich. You need to keep your strength up. Abigail unwraps the cellophane, the chemical smell of processed meat turning her stomach. But Brent's right. She needs fuel, especially if she wants to keep her powers in check. She takes a reluctant bite. Any luck today? She asks between mouthfuls. Brent shakes his head. Nothing steady. Helped unload some trucks down at the docks, but it's all-day labor. No one's looking to hire long-term. The unspoken hangs between them. No one's looking to hire people like us. Abigail nods, guilt gnawing at her insides. If it weren't for her, for what she is, maybe Brent could have a normal life. A job, an apartment, a future that doesn't involve scraping by on the fringes of society. As if reading her thoughts, Brent's expression softens. Hey, he says, reaching out to squeeze her shoulder. We're going to be okay. We've made it this far, right? Abigail manages a weak smile. Yeah, we have. But as she meets her brother's gaze, the memory surfaces unbidden. The day everything changed, the day her powers awakened. 2 years ago, the juvenile detention center's fluorescent lights hum, casting everything in a sickly pallor. Abigail paces her cell, 5 steps forward, 5 steps back. The walls seem to close in with each turn. Her veins burn with need, every nerve screaming for the chemical relief she's been denied. Withdrawal claws at her insides, and she digs her nails into her palms, focusing on that small, tangible pain. A commotion erupts in the hallway, shouts, the sound of running feet. Abigail presses herself against the door, straining to hear. Something about an attack, a breakout in progress. Suddenly, an explosion rocks the building. Abigail is thrown back, her head cracking against the concrete wall. Stars burst behind her eyes as alarms blare to life. Through the ringing in her ears, she hears the locks disengage. The cell door swings open. Abigail staggers to her feet, adrenaline momentarily drowning out the withdrawal symptoms. She steps into the chaos of the hallway. Other teens stumble from their cells, dazed and confused. Guards shout orders, their voices tight with panic. Another explosion, this one closer. The lights flicker and die. In the sudden darkness, Abigail sees it, a trail of luminescent smoke drifting through the air. It pulses with an otherworldly energy, and something deep inside her responds. Without thinking, she reaches out. The moment her fingers touch the smoke, her world explodes. Power surges through her, raw and uncontrollable. It feels like being torn apart and remade in the same instant. Abigail screams, her body glowing from within. Neon light erupts from her hands, carving scars across the walls. She runs, blinded by her own radiance. Concrete crumbles beneath her feet. She's moving faster than should be possible, trailing streaks of light like a human comet. Abigail bursts through the detention center's walls and into the night beyond. Seattle spreads before her, a glittering maze of light and shadow. For a moment, she's suspended in midair, her body humming with newfound energy. Then gravity reasserts itself, and she falls. The memory fades, leaving Abigail shaken. She looks down to find her hands trembling, wisps of neon light dancing between her fingers. With effort, she quells the power, but the reminder of that day lingers. Abby Brent's voice is gentle. He's watching her with concern, and Abigail realizes she's been silent for too long. "Sorry," she mumbles. "Just remembering." Brent nods, understanding without needing the details. He was the one who found her after her escape, half dead and terrified of her own skin. He's been by her side ever since, helping her learn to control her powers, to hide what she is from a world that fears the so-called conduits. "We should get some sleep," Brent says, changing the subject. "I heard about a potential job tomorrow. Construction site looking for day labourers. If we're lucky, it could mean steady work for a while." Abigail nods, grateful for the distraction. As they settle into their makeshift beds, piles of blankets and cardboard, she stares at the ceiling, tracing the water stains like constellations. Sleep eludes her. The city's pulse thrums through her veins, a siren song of neon and possibility. She could be out there running faster than thought, painting the night with trails of light. Free. But freedom comes with a price. The DUP, Department of Unified Protection, hunts people like her. Conduits disappear into government facilities, never to be seen again. And then there are the other dangers. Gangs eager to exploit her powers, desperate people who'd turn her in for the reward. No, Abigail reminds herself. This half-life of hiding and scraping by is the closest thing to safety she and Brent can hope for. She turns on her side, watching the steady rise and fall of her brother's chest. Brent has sacrificed everything for her. His dreams, his future, all to keep her safe. Abigail makes a silent vow. Somehow, someday she'll find a way to repay him, to give him the life he deserves. But for now, all she can do is close her eyes and pray for dreamless sleep. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges. Another day of hiding, of pretending to be normal in a world that's anything but. As consciousness fades, Abigail can't shake the feeling that everything is about to change. A storm is coming, and whether she's ready or not, she'll be caught in its eye. Chapter 2. The Heist. Dawn breaks over Seattle, painting the sky in muted greys and pale pinks. Abigail blinks awake, her body stiff from another night on the hard floor. Beside her, Brent's makeshift bed is empty, the blankets neatly folded. She finds him by the window, a sliver of plywood pried away to create a lookout. His face is drawn, dark circles shadowing his eyes. "Brent," Abigail's voice is rough with sleep. "What's wrong?" He turns and the forced smile doesn't reach his eyes. "Nothing." just thinking. Abigail knows that look. It's the one he gets when he's about to suggest something she won't like. She braces herself. "I heard about a job," Brent says, confirming her suspicions. "Big score, could set us up for months." "What kind of job?" Abigail asks, wariness creeping into her tone. Brent hesitates, and that's all the answer she needs. "It's not exactly legal." "Brent, no." Abigail shakes her head. "We can't risk it. If we get caught, if we don't do something, we'll starve." Brent cuts in, frustration edging his words. "Or worse, you'll get sick. And then what? We can't exactly walk into a hospital." The truth of his words stings. They've been skating on the edge for too long, each day a struggle to find food and stay hidden. Abigail feels the constant drain of suppressing her powers, the effort leaving her weakened and vulnerable. "What's the job?" she asks finally, hating herself for even considering it. Relief flashes across Brent's face. "There's a penthouse at 3rd and Stone. Owner's out of town. Security's top-notch, but—" He trails off, looking at her meaningfully. Abigail's stomach twists. "You want me to use my powers?" Brent nods. "Just to get us in and out quick and clean?" No one gets hurt. She wants to argue, to remind him of the dangers. But the desperation in his eyes stops her. This is killing him, she realizes, the constant worry, the pressure of keeping them both alive and hidden. "Okay," Abigail says softly. "I'll do it." The relief on Brent's face is almost painful to see. He pulls her into a tight hug. "It'll be okay, Fetch, I promise. After this, things will get better." Abigail nods against his shoulder, praying he's right. Night falls and Seattle transforms. The city becomes a glittering labyrinth of light and shadow, neon signs pulsing like beacons. Abigail feels the familiar pull, her power responding to the electric heartbeat of the urban landscape. She and Brent crouch on a rooftop across from their target. The penthouse takes up the top 3 floors of a sleek high-rise, its windows dark and uninviting. "Security patrol passes every 15 minutes, Brent murmurs, checking his watch. "We'll have a 10-minute window once we're inside before the system resets." Abigail nods, her mouth dry. She flexes her fingers, feeling the energy crackling just beneath her skin. "And you're sure no one's home?" "Positive. Owner's in Europe for another week." Brent gives her shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "You ready?" "No," she wants to say, but instead she nods. "Let's do this." The moment the security guard rounds the corner, they move. Abigail takes a deep breath, reaching for the power she usually fights to contain. It surges through her, eager and wild. She grabs Brent's hand and the world blurs. They become streaks of neon light, racing across the gap between buildings faster than thought. For a heart-stopping moment, they're in free fall. Then Abigail's feet touch glass and she wills the energy outward. The window doesn't shatter. Instead, the neon light seems to melt through it, carrying them inside. They materialize in a darkened living room, Brent stumbling slightly as Abigail releases him. "Holy shit," he whispers, eyes wide. "That was, wow." Abigail manages a shaky smile, trying to ignore the exhilaration singing through her veins. Using her powers like this, it feels right in a way that terrifies her. "Clock's ticking," she reminds him. "Let's find what we came for and get out." They move quickly through the penthouse, Brent heading for the home office while Abigail searches the master bedroom. The wealth on display is staggering. She forces herself to focus on the task at hand, ignoring the twinge of envy. In the walk-in closet, she hits the jackpot. A small safe, hidden behind a panel of exotic hardwood. Abigail places her hand against the metal, feeling the mechanisms within. She lets her power flow, tracing the circuits and tumblers. With a soft click, the safe swings open. "Brent," she calls softly. "I found." The words die in her throat as a piercing alarm splits the air. Red emergency lights bathe the penthouse in a hellish glow. Brent appears in the doorway, panic etched on his face. "We must have tripped a silent alarm. We need to go. Now." They race for the window they entered through, but Abigail skids to a stop. Outside, a spotlight sweeps across the building's face. The whir of helicopter blades grows louder. "Shit," Brent hisses. "How did they respond so fast? A new sound reaches them, boots on stairs, moving fast. This way." Abigail grabs Brent's arm, pulling him toward the roof access. Her mind races. If she can get them high enough, maybe she can use her powers to escape. They burst onto the roof, the wind whipping Abigail's hair. The helicopter circles overhead, its spotlight pinning them in harsh white light. "Freeze!" The voice comes from behind them. Abigail turns to see armed figures emerging from the stairwell. Their tactical gear is unlike any police uniform she's seen. "Brent," she says, her voice tight. "When I say run, you run. Don't stop no matter what. Abby, no, hands where we can see them." One of the armed figures steps forward. "You're under arrest by authority of the Vancouver Pack. Any resistance will be met with lethal force." Vancouver Pack. The name sends a chill through Abigail. She's heard whispers of them, conduit hunters operating outside the law. Time seems to slow. Abigail feels the neon signs below, the electricity humming through the building. She reaches for that power, letting it fill her until she feels she might burst. "Run!" she screams and unleashes hell. Neon light explodes outward in a blinding nova. The armed figures are thrown back, their cries lost in the roar of energy. Abigail grabs Brent and leaps from the roof. They plummet, the ground rushing up to meet them. Brent's scream is torn away by the wind. At the last possible second, Abigail wills the neon to catch them. They hit the street in a blast of light, concrete cratering beneath their feet. Without pausing, Abigail pulls Brent into her slipstream. They race through the city, trailing neon like comets. Behind them, sirens wail. The helicopter gives chase, but in the maze of streets and alleys, Abigail is unstoppable. She pushes her powers to the limit, moving faster than she ever has before. Only when the sounds of pursuit fade does she slow, finally coming to a stop in a deserted train yard. Brent staggers away from her, retching onto the gravel. Abigail sinks to her knees, her entire body shaking. The rush of power fades, leaving her drained and terrified. What has she done? "Are you okay?" she asks Brent, her voice barely a whisper. He looks at her, his face pale in the moonlight. There's something in his eyes she's never seen before. Fear. "Jesus, Abby," he says, "what are you?" The question hangs in the air between them, heavy with implications. Abigail has no answer. She wraps her arms around herself, suddenly cold, despite the lingering heat of her powers. In the distance, sirens continue to wail. The city is on high alert now, and somewhere out there, the Vancouver Pack is hunting. Abigail meets her brother's gaze, seeing the unspoken question there. Where do we go from here?
For the first time since her powers awakened, she has no idea.
Chapter 3. On the Run. The first hints of dawn creep across Seattle's skyline, painting the clouds in hues of fire. But in the labyrinth beneath the city streets, darkness still reigns supreme. Abigail and Brent stumble through the dank tunnels of the underground, the echo of their footsteps a constant reminder of pursuit. Abigail's powers flicker weakly, providing just enough light to navigate the treacherous terrain. The neon glow casts strange shadows on the walls, turning innocent pipes and debris into looming monsters. "We need to stop," Brent pants, leaning against a grimy wall. Just for a minute." Abigail wants to argue, to push on, but exhaustion claws at her limbs. She nods, letting the neon light fade. Darkness envelops them, broken only by the distant drip of water. In the black, Brent's voice is small. "Abby, what happened back there?" She swallows hard. The memory of the rooftop, of the raw power she unleashed, sends a shiver down her spine. "I don't know," she whispers. "I just reacted. You took out an entire tactical team." There's a tremor in Brent's words. Fear, awe, she can't tell. And that jump. "Abby, we should be dead. I'm sorry, the words feel inadequate." "I never meant for any of this to happen." Silence stretches between them, heavy with unspoken questions. Finally, Brent sighs. "It's not your fault. I'm the one who pushed for that stupid heist." Abigail reaches out, finding his hand in the dark. She squeezes it, grateful for the anchor of human contact. "We'll figure this out," she says, trying to inject confidence she doesn't feel into her voice. "We always do." A distant rumble interrupts the moment. At first, Abigail thinks it's the subway, but the sound is wrong. It's deeper, more ominous, and it's getting closer. "Run!" Brent yells, pulling her forward. They sprint through the tunnels, Abigail's neon light flaring to life. Behind them, the rumble grows to a roar. A wave of concrete and metal bursts through the wall, missing them by inches. Abigail risks a glance back, and her heart seizes. A figure emerges from the debris, encased in animate concrete. Its blank face turns toward them, and she knows with cold certainty that this is no ordinary pursuer. "Dupe!" she screams, redoubling her pace. They emerge into a larger chamber, the remnants of an old underground marketplace. Abigail's mind races. She's heard whispers of the Department of Unified Protection, the government agency tasked with containing conduits. But she never imagined anything like this. The concrete behemoth lumbers after them, joined by more conventionally armed soldiers in high-tech armor. A voice booms through a loudspeaker. "Surrender now, conduit! Resistance will only make your sentence worse." "Like hell," Abigail mutters. She pushes Brent behind a crumbling pillar, then turns to face their pursuers. Power surges through her, fueled by desperation and rage. Neon light erupts from her hands, slamming into the concrete conduit. It staggers back, chunks of its armor cracking and falling away. The other soldiers open fire, but Abigail is already moving faster than their eyes can track. She becomes a blur of light and fury, ricocheting off walls and striking with devastating force. Part of her is terrified by the destruction she's capable of. A larger part exults in finally letting loose. Abby Brent's shout cuts through the chaos. "This way." He's found a maintenance tunnel barely large enough to crawl through. Abigail unleashes one final blast, bringing down chunks of the ceiling to slow their pursuers. Then she dives into the tunnel after Brent. They crawl for what feels like hours, the sounds of pursuit fading behind them. When they finally emerge, they find themselves in a different world. Gone is the dank underground. Instead, they stand in a small, warmly lit storage room. The rich aroma of cooking food fills the air, making Abigail's stomach growl painfully. "Where are we?" she whispers. Before Brent can answer, a door opens. Both of them tense, ready to flee, but the man who enters is no soldier. He's older, with a weathered face and kind eyes. He takes in their disheveled appearance without surprise. "Ah," he says, his accent a mix of Scandinavian and Pacific Northwest. "I was wondering when you two would show up." Brent relaxes slightly. "Olaf, thank God." Abigail looks between them, confused. "You know him." "We've never met," Olaf says with a gentle smile, "but word travels fast in certain circles. Come, let's get you cleaned up and fed before we talk." He leads them through the storage room and into a small, cozy apartment above what Abigail realizes must be a restaurant. The furnishings are simple but comfortable, a stark contrast to the luxury of the penthouse they'd tried to rob just hours ago. Olaf busies himself in the kitchenette, while Brent and Abigail take turns washing up in a tiny bathroom. The hot water is a blessing, sluicing away grime and some of the night's tension. But as Abigail stares at her reflection in the foggy mirror, she hardly recognizes herself. Her eyes glow faintly with residual neon energy, a constant reminder of how much has changed. When she emerges, Olaf has laid out a feast on the small table. The sight and smell of real hot food nearly brings tears to her eyes. "Eat," Olaf encourages. "You're safe here for now." As they devour the meal, Olaf explains. His restaurant, a small Nordic fusion place near the harbour, is more than it seems. It's a way station of sorts, part of an underground network that helps people like Abigail. "Conduits, you mean?" Abigail says between bites. Olaf nods. "And those who protect them." "Your brother here has been a great help in keeping our network informed of DUP movements." Abigail turns to Brent, surprised. He looks away, unable to meet her eyes. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you," he says softly. "I was trying to keep you safe by spying on the DUP. Brent, that's incredibly dangerous." "No more dangerous than what you can do," he counters, a hint of that earlier fear creeping into his voice. Olaf clears his throat. "Perhaps now is not the time for such discussions. You both need rest. We can talk more in the morning." He shows them to a small bedroom with twin beds. It's not much, but after months of sleeping rough, it feels like luxury. As Abigail settles into bed, the events of the past 24 hours crash over her. The heist, the Vancouver pack, the DUP, her own terrifying display of power. It's too much to process. "Brent?" she whispers into the darkness. "Yeah, I'm scared." There's a long pause before he responds. "Me too, Abby, me too." Sleep, when it comes, is fitful and filled with dreams of concrete monsters and neon fire. Abigail wakes frequently, each time half expecting to find DUP soldiers looming over her. But the night passes without incident, and eventually exhaustion claims her. When morning light filters through the curtains, Abigail opens her eyes to find Brent's bed empty. Panic spikes through her until she hears muffled voices from the other room. She pads quietly to the door, straining to listen. "See, Aunt, stay here," Olaf is saying. "The DUP will be combing every inch of the city." "I know." Brent's voice is heavy with fatigue and worry. "But where can we go? After what happened last night, they'll be looking for conduits everywhere." "I might have a solution," a new voice chimes in. Female, confident. "But it comes with strings attached." Abigail pushes the door open, stepping into the small living area. 3 heads turn to look at her. Olaf and Brent both looking like they haven't slept, and a stranger. The woman is striking, with close-cropped hair and an air of dangerous competence. "Abigail," the woman says with a predatory smile. "I've been looking forward to meeting you. My name is Shane, and I think we can help each other." Abigail feels a chill run down her spine. Something in Shane's eyes sets her on edge, but with the DUP closing in and nowhere else to turn, what choice does she have? The neon in her veins pulses, reacting to her unease. Whatever comes next, Abigail knows nothing will ever be the same. Chapter 4. Enter Shane. The small apartment above Olaf's restaurant feels even more cramped with Shane's presence. She lounges on the worn sofa, utterly at ease, while tension crackles through the room like static electricity. Abigail stands with her back to the wall, arms crossed. Neon energy pulses beneath her skin, responding to her unease. Brent hovers nearby, his posture protective despite the dark circles under his eyes. Shane's gaze never wavers from Abigail. "You've caused quite a stir," she says, a hint of admiration in her voice. "The DUP is tearing the city apart looking for you." "Why are you here?" Abigail asks bluntly. Shane's smile widens. "Direct, I like that." She leans forward, elbows on her knees. "I'm here to offer you a way out, protection, purpose." Brent scoffs. "Out of the goodness of your heart, right?" "Brent," Olaf warns softly from his position by the door. Shane doesn't seem offended. "Of course not. This is business. You have something I need, and I have something you desperately want." "And what's that?" Abigail asks, though she already suspects the answer. "Safety," Shane says simply. A place where you can be yourself, use your powers without fear. And in return, you'll work for me. The word hangs in the air. Work. It sounds innocuous, but Abigail isn't naive. You mean steal for you? Maybe worse. Shane shrugs, unapologetic. I won't lie to you. What I do isn't strictly legal. But in a world that fears and hunts people like you, does legality really matter? Abigail wants to argue, but the memory of the DUP's relentless pursuit is still fresh. She looks to Brent, seeing the conflict in his eyes. What about my brother, she asks. Package deal, Shane says smoothly. Brent's skills are valuable too, and I know you won't go anywhere without him. Brent steps forward. Can we have a moment to discuss this? Shane nods, rising gracefully. Of course. Olaf, why don't you show me that famous coffee of yours? As they leave the room, Abigail lets out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. Brent, I don't like this. I know, he says, running a hand through his hair. But what choice do we have? The DUP won't stop hunting us. And after what happened at the penthouse, the Vancouver pack is probably after us too. Abigail paces, neon sparking at her fingertips. Shane's a criminal. If we do this, there's no going back. Brent's laugh is bitter. Abby, we crossed that line when we tried to rob that penthouse. At least this way we'll have some protection. She wants to argue, but exhaustion weighs on her. The constant fear, the running, the struggle to control her powers, it's all too much. What if I lose control again? She asks quietly. Brent's expression softens. He pulls her into a hug, and for a moment, Abigail lets herself feel like a little sister again, safe in her big brother's arms. We'll figure it out, he murmurs. We always do. When Shane and Olaf return, Abigail has made her decision. She meets Shane's eyes, straightening her spine. All right, we're in, but we have conditions. Shane raises an eyebrow, intrigued. I'm listening. We work for you, but we're not your slaves. If we think something's too dangerous or wrong, we can refuse. And if we ever want out, you let us go. No strings attached. Shane considers for a moment, then nods. Fair enough. Anything else? Abigail glances at Brent before continuing. I want training. Help me control my powers, use them better. A slow smile spreads across Shane's face. Oh, I think we can definitely arrange that. As they shake hands, sealing the deal, Abigail can't shake the feeling that she's made a deal with the devil. But when Shane leads them out of Olaf's and into a sleek black car with tinted windows, the relief of not having to run overwhelms her misgivings. The drive takes them deep into the industrial district, a maze of warehouses and abandoned factories. Shane's base of operations is a converted textile mill, its brick exterior weathered and unremarkable. But inside is another world entirely. The cavernous main floor hums with activity. People move with purpose, carrying crates, hunched over computers, or engaged in hushed conversations. The air crackles with an energy that has nothing to do with Abigail's powers. Welcome to your new home, Shane says, a note of pride in her voice. As she leads them on a tour, Abigail's head spins. There's a fully equipped gym, a high-tech command center, living quarters that put their previous shelters to shame, and everywhere, evidence of wealth that can only come from illegal activities. This is where you'll train, Shane says, gesturing to a reinforced area cordoned off from the rest. We've dealt with conduits before. This space can handle whatever you dish out.
Abigail's fingers twitch, the neon within her responding to the promise of release.
She pushes the feeling down. And what exactly will you have us doing? Shane's smile is enigmatic. For now, get settled, rest. Tomorrow, we'll discuss your first job. As Shane walks away, Brent leans in close to Abigail. I don't trust her, he whispers. Me neither, Abigail admits. But we're safer here than out there. For now. They're shown to their quarters, separate rooms, a luxury they haven't had in years. Abigail sinks onto the bed, softer than anything she can remember. She should feel relieved, grateful even. Instead, anxiety gnaws at her gut. A knock at the door jolts her from her thoughts. It's Brent, his face tight with worry. "Abby, I've been talking to some of the others here. The things Shane's involved in, it's not just theft. There are rumors about human trafficking, drug running, nasty stuff." Abigail's heart sinks. "What have we gotten ourselves into, Brent?" He shakes his head. "I don't know, but we need to be careful. Shane might be protecting us from the DUP, but I'm starting to think the DUP might not be the worst thing out there." As if summoned by their conversation, Shane appears in the doorway. "Getting settled in?" she asks, her tone friendly, but her eyes sharp. Abigail forces a smile. "Yes, thank you. It's a lot to take in." Shane nods. "I'm sure it is, but don't worry. You'll find your place here soon enough." Her gaze locks onto Abigail, intense and unreadable. "We have big plans for you, Abigail." "Very big plans." As Shane walks away, Abigail and Brent exchange a look. The sense of foreboding that's been building all day reaches a crescendo. They're no longer running, true, but they may have jumped from the frying pan into a fire of their own making. Abigail flexes her fingers, watching neon light dance across her skin. Whatever Shane has planned, whatever dangers lie ahead, she'll face them. She has to, because the alternative, capture by the DUP, experimentation, imprisonment, is unthinkable. As night falls over Seattle, Abigail stares out the window at the glittering cityscape. Somewhere out there, the DUP is still hunting. The Vancouver pack is plotting. And here she is, in the heart of a criminal empire, with powers she barely understands. She's never felt more alone. Chapter 5. Power Play. The neon sign of the Showbox Theatre pulses in the night, its glow reflecting off the rain-slicked streets. Abigail crouches on a nearby rooftop, her body humming with barely contained energy. The past week of training has honed her powers to a razor's edge, but tonight will be the true test. Her earpiece crackles to life. "Target's arriving," Shane's cool voice informs her. "Remember the plan. In and out, no witnesses." Abigail's stomach churns. "Understood," she replies, trying to keep the tremor out of her voice. A sleek black car pulls up to the theatre's side entrance. A man steps out, flanked by bodyguards. Even from this distance, Abigail can see the ostentatious glint of gold chains and rings. "That's our mark," Shane confirms. "Rodrigo Alvarez. He's carrying a drive with information we need. Get it and get out." Abigail takes a deep breath, centering herself. The neon energy within her responds, coiling like a spring ready to release. She's done this dozens of times in training, but never with real stake, never with the threat of capture or worse looming over her. "Now fetch!" Shane's voice holds an edge of impatience. Abigail leaps. For a moment she's in free fall, the wind whipping through her hair. Then she becomes the neon, a streak of brilliant light arcing through the night sky. She reforms behind Alvarez and his guards, the concrete cracking beneath her feet as she lands. The guards whirl, reaching for weapons, but Abigail is already moving. Neon light erupts from her hands, precise blasts that send the men flying. They hit the wall hard, slumping to the ground unconscious. Alvarez stumbles back, his eyes wide with terror. What are you?" Abigail doesn't answer, can't answer. The rush of power, the thrill of the fight, it's intoxicating. Part of her wants to let loose, to really show what she can do. But Shane's voice in her ear grounds her. "The drive, fetch, focus, right the mission." Abigail reaches out, her hand glowing with energy. "The drive," she demands, her voice distorted by the power coursing through her. "Now!" Alvarez fumbles in his pocket, producing a small USB stick. Abigail snatches it, the plastic casing melting slightly at her touch. "Please," Alvarez whimpers. "Don't." A blast of neon sends him sprawling, joining his guards in unconsciousness. Abigail stares at her hand, shocked by her own actions. She didn't mean to. "Good work." Shane's voice cuts through her thoughts. "Now get back to base. quickly. Abigail glances at the unconscious men. They're breathing, at least. She tells herself that's enough, that she did what she had to do. But as she races across the city in streaks of light, the weight of her actions settles heavy in her chest. Back at Shane's base, the adrenaline fades, leaving Abigail drained and conflicted. She hands the drive over to Shane, avoiding eye contact. "Excellent work," Shane praises, pocketing the drive. "You're progressing faster than I'd hoped." "What was on it?" Abigail asks, curiosity overriding her unease. Shane's smile is sharp. "Nothing you need to worry about. Let's just say it'll help us stay a step ahead of our competition." Before Abigail can press further, a new voice cuts in. "Holy shit, that was you!" Abigail turns to see a young woman about her age approaching. Her hair is a riot of colourful braids, and her arms are covered in intricate tattoos. Despite the late hour, her eyes are bright with excitement. "I'm Jenny," she introduces herself. "I handle comms and tech around here, and let me tell you what you did tonight. Fucking legendary." Abigail shifts uncomfortably under the praise. "I was just following orders." Jenny laughs. "Following orders with style, girl. Come on, let me buy you a drink. You look like you could use one." Before Abigail can protest, Jenny is steering her towards a makeshift bar in the corner of the warehouse. Shane watches them go, an unreadable expression on her face. The alcohol burns going down, but it helps take the edge off. Jenny chatters away, filling Abigail in on the ins and outs of Shane's operation. It's clear she holds their boss in high regard, but there's an undercurrent of wariness in her words. "So," Jenny says, leaning in conspiratorially, "what's it like? Having powers, I mean." Abigail stares into her glass, watching the neon reflections dance across the surface. "Terrifying," she admits quietly. "Exhilarating. Sometimes I feel like I could do anything. Other times, I'm scared I'll lose control and hurt someone." Jenny nods sympathetically. "I can't even imagine. But hey, that's why you're here, right? Shane'll help you figure it out." "Yeah," Abigail murmurs, not entirely convinced. She glances around the warehouse, suddenly acutely aware of her surroundings. "Jenny, what exactly does Shane have you do here?" The other woman's smile falters slightly. "Bit of everything, really. Information gathering, mostly. Sometimes I run interference with the cops or D." She hesitates, then adds, "Look, I know Shane's methods aren't always conventional, but she's looking out for people like you, conduits who've got nowhere else to go." Abigail wants to believe her, wants to believe that there's a higher purpose to all this. But the memory of Alvarez's terrified face haunts her. "Hey," Jenny's voice softens, "I know that look. First mission jitters, right? It gets easier." "Does it?" Abigail asks, meeting Jenny's eyes. "Or do we just get better at ignoring the cost?" Jenny doesn't have an answer for that. They sit in silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken truths hanging between them. Finally, Jenny stands. "Come on, I want to show you something." She leads Abigail through a maze of corridors to a small, cluttered office. Screens cover one wall, displaying news feeds, police scanners, and what looks like DUP communications. "This is my domain," Jenny explains, settling into a chair with practiced ease. Her fingers fly over a keyboard, bringing up a new set of images. "But this is why we do what we do." Abigail leans in, her breath catching. The screens show conduits, some no older than children, being arrested, experimented on, locked away in sterile cells. The cruelty is evident even through the grainy footage. "The DUP, the government, they're scared of people like you," Jenny says quietly. "And fear makes people do terrible things. Shane, she's trying to build a safe haven, a place where conduits can be free." Abigail's mind reels. The images before her are horrifying, but they align all too well with her own fears. "Why didn't Shane tell me this herself?" Jenny shrugs. "Plausible deniability, maybe, or she wanted you to see it for yourself, make up your own mind." As Abigail stares at the screens, her earlier doubts begin to fade. Yes, what they're doing isn't legal. Yes, people might get hurt. But compared to the alternative, thank you, she says to Jenny, for showing me this. Jenny smiles, but there's a sadness in her eyes. Just be careful, okay? This life, it's not easy. And Shane, she's got big plans. Make sure you know what you're getting into. As Abigail leaves the office, her mind is a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. The rush of the mission, the weight of her actions, the horror of what she's seen, and the growing certainty that she's on a path she can't easily leave. She finds Brent in the training area, working out his frustrations on a punching bag. He stops when he sees her, concern etched on his face. Abby, you okay? Abigail forces a smile. Yeah, just processing. Brent nods, understanding without needing the details. We'll figure this out, he says, echoing his words from days ago. But this time, Abigail isn't so sure. As she heads to her room, exhaustion finally catching up with her, Abigail catches sight of Shane watching her from across the warehouse. The older woman's expression is calculating, almost hungry. Abigail shivers. She's made her choice, committed to this path. But as she collapses onto her bed, neon light dancing across her skin, she can't shake the feeling that she's just taken her first step into a world far more dangerous than she could have imagined. The future stretches before her, bright and terrible as her powers. And Abigail Walker, once a scared girl running from her abilities, now stands on the precipice of becoming something else entirely. Whether that something is a hero or a monster remains to be seen. Chapter 6, Echoes of the Past. The harsh fluorescent lights of Shane's training facility flicker, and for a moment Abigail is transported back. The sterile walls of the present blur into the confines of her past, and she's no longer in control. 2 years ago, juvenile detention center. The cell is too small, the walls pressing in. Abigail paces, 5 steps forward, 5 steps back, her body screaming for a fix she can't have. Withdrawal claws at her insides, turning her bones to ice and her skin to fire. Lights out, Walker. The guard's voice is grating, uncaring. Abigail collapses onto her thin mattress, curling into herself. She should never have taken that first hit, should never have let the older kids talk her into it. But the high had been so good, so freeing. For a few blessed hours she hadn't felt like a freak, like something was fundamentally wrong with her. Now, in the darkness of her cell, the wrongness is all she can feel. It pulses through her veins, an electric current she can't control. Sometimes, in the depths of night, she swears she can see light dancing beneath her skin. Sleep, when it comes, is fitful and filled with dreams of neon cities and voices she can't quite understand. Abigail, focus. Shane's sharp command snaps her back to the present. Abigail blinks, disoriented. She's in the middle of the training area, neon energy crackling around her fists. Sorry, she mumbles, trying to center herself. I got distracted. Shane's eyes narrow. Distractions get you killed in our line of work again. And this time, hit the target. Abigail nods, pushing the memories away. She focuses on the reinforced dummy across the room, channeling her power. Neon light erupts from her hands, a focus beam that slices through the air. The dummy explodes in a shower of sparks and melted plastic. Shane's slow clap echoes through the facility. Better, much better. Her smile is all predator. You're almost ready. Ready for what? Abigail asks, a knot forming in her stomach. You'll see, Shane replies cryptically. For now, get some rest. You've earned it. As Shane walks away, Abigail sinks to the floor, suddenly exhausted. The use of her powers always leaves her drained, but lately it's been worse. The more she pushes herself, the harder it becomes to keep the past at bay. 18 months ago, Juvenile Detention Center, Walker, you've got a visitor. Abigail looks up from her battered paperback, confused. She never gets visitors. As the guard leads her to the visitation room, her heart races. Has something happened to Brent? But it's not Brent waiting for her. It's a woman she's never seen before, impeccably dressed and radiating authority. "Hello, Abigail," the woman says, her voice cool and professional. "My name is Augustine. I'm here to talk to you about your unique situation." Abigail tenses. "I don't know what you're talking about." Augustine's smile doesn't reach her eyes. "I think you do. We've been monitoring you, Abigail. We know you're different, special." Fear courses through Abigail. She's tried so hard to hide it, to convince herself it was all in her head. "What do you want from me?" "To help you," Augustine says smoothly. "The Department of Unified Protection has resources, training. We can teach you to control your abilities, to use them for the greater good." It sounds too good to be true. And in Abigail's experience, if something sounds too good to be true, it usually is. "And if I say no?" she asks, her voice barely a whisper. Augustine's expression hardens. "Then you'll be deemed a threat to public safety, and we'll have to take appropriate measures." The threat hangs in the air between them. Abigail's hands begin to glow faintly, her power responding to her fear. Augustine notices, her eyes gleam with interest. "Fascinating. Neon-based abilities are quite rare. With the proper guidance, you could be truly exceptional." Abigail stands abruptly, her chair screeching against the floor. "I want to go back to my cell." As the guard leads her away, Abigail can feel Augustine's eyes boring into her back. She's made a powerful enemy, she knows. But the alternative, becoming a tool for the government, a weapon to be used against others like her, is unthinkable. That night, as Abigail lies awake in her cell, she makes a decision. She has to get out, has to run, before Augustine and the DUP can sink their claws into her. Little does she know, her escape is just days away. A knock at her door jolts Abigail back to the present. She opens it to find Brent, his face pale and drawn. "Abby," he says, his voice tight, "we need to talk." She ushers him in, closing the door behind them. "What's wrong?" Brent runs a hand through his hair, agitated. "I've been doing some digging, trying to figure out exactly what Shane's involved in. And Abby, it's bad. Really bad." Abigail's heart sinks. Part of her has sensed the darkness lurking beneath Shane's smooth exterior. But she's been so focused on controlling her powers, on the promise of safety, that she's pushed her doubts aside. "Tell me," she says, steeling herself. Brent takes a deep breath. "It's not just theft and drug running. Shane's involved in human trafficking. Specifically, trafficking conduits." The words hit Abigail like a physical blow. "What? No, that can't be right." Shane helps conduits. She protects them. "She exploits them," Brent counters. "Think about it, Abby. Why did she really want you? Your powers make you valuable. To the right buyer, you'd be worth millions." Abigail shakes her head, denial warring with a growing sense of horror. No, you must have misunderstood. Jenny showed me proof of what the DUP does to conduits. Shane is fighting against that. Or using it as cover for her own operations," Brent says gently. "Abby, I know you want to believe in her, but we can't ignore this." As the implications sink in, Abigail feels her world tilting on its axis. She thinks of the missions she's run for Shane, the information she's stolen. How much of it was really about protecting conduits, and how much was about identifying new targets? "What do we do?" she asks, her voice small. Brent's expression is grim. "We need to get out. Now, before Shane realizes what we know." But even as he says it, alarms begin to blare throughout the facility. Shouts and running footsteps echo from the hallway. Abigail and Brent exchange a look of panic. They're out of time. "Attention all personnel," Shane's voice comes over the intercom, cold and commanding. "We have a security breach. Lockdown protocols are now in effect. And Abigail, be a dear and come to my office. We need to have a chat." As the facility descends into chaos around them, Abigail feels the neon surging within her, responding to her fear and anger. She's done running, done being used. It's time to face Shane and the echoes of her past head-on. Chapter 7. Betrayal. Alarms blare through Shane's compound, red emergency lights painting the corridors in a hellish glow. Brent's heart pounds as he races through the chaos, dodging panicked gang members and security personnel. He has to reach Shane before Abigail does, has to stop this before it goes too far. He skids around a corner, nearly colliding with Jenny. Her eyes are wide with fear and confusion. "Brent, what's going on?" she asks, grabbing his arm. He hesitates. Can he trust her? But there's no time for doubt. "Shane's trafficking conduits," he says breathlessly. "We have to stop her." Jenny's face pales. "What? No, that can't be." "It is," Brent cuts her off. "Help me or get out of my way." After a moment's hesitation, Jenny nods. "Shane's office. This way." They sprint through the compound, the alarms growing louder. As they approach Shane's office, Brent sees 2 guards posted outside. Before he can formulate a plan, Jenny steps forward. "Code red," she says authoritatively. "Shane wants all personnel in the main hall. Now." The guards exchange a glance, then nod and hurry away. Jenny turns to Brent with a grim smile. "Perks of being the comms girl. Nobody questions you during an emergency." Brent's gratitude is short-lived as they burst into Shane's office. The woman herself stands behind her desk, calm amid the chaos, as if she's been expecting them. "Brent," Shane says smoothly, "I was wondering when you'd show up. I must admit I'm disappointed in your choice of company." Her gaze slides to Jenny, who flinches under its weight. "It's over, Shane," Brent declares, trying to keep his voice steady. "We know about the trafficking. We're shutting you down." Shane's laugh is cold and mirthless. "Oh, Brent, did you really think it would be that easy?" She presses a button on her desk and hidden panels in the walls slide open. Armed guards pour in, surrounding them. Jenny raises her hands in surrender, but Brent stands his ground. "Abigail will stop you," he says defiantly. "Abigail!" Shane's smile is razor-sharp. "Darling, Abigail is the prize. Do you have any idea how much someone with her powers is worth on the black market?" Rage surges through Brent. He lunges at Shane, but strong hands grab him from behind. A guard slams him to the ground, pressing a knee into his back. "You won't get away with this," Brent grunts, struggling against the hold. Shane crouches beside him, her voice low and dangerous. "I already have. And you're going to disappear. Just another runaway, lost to the streets of Seattle." As a guard approaches with a syringe, Brent locks eyes with Jenny. "Tell Abigail," he gasps. "Tell her the truth." The needle plunges into his neck and darkness swallows him. Abigail races through the compound, neon energy crackling around her. The alarms, the shouts, the pounding of feet, it all fades into background noise. Her entire focus is on reaching Shane's office, on finding Brent. She rounds a corner and nearly runs headlong into Jenny. The other woman looks terrified, her usual confidence shattered. "Jenny, what's happening? Where's Brent?" Abigail demands. Jenny opens her mouth, then closes it, conflict clear in her eyes. After a moment she says, "Shane's office, hurry!" Abigail nods her thanks and takes off again, leaving Jenny behind. She doesn't see the regret and guilt that wash over the other woman's face. When Abigail bursts into Shane's office, she finds the older woman alone, looking out the window at the Seattle skyline. The alarms have fallen silent, an eerie calm descending over the compound. "Where's Brent?" Abigail asks, her voice tight with fear and anger. Shane turns, her expression a mask of concern. "Abigail, I'm so sorry, Brent, he's gone." The words hit Abigail like a physical blow. "Gone? What do you mean, gone?" "He left," Shane says gently. "He came to me, said he couldn't handle this life anymore. The danger, the constant hiding. He thought you'd be safer without him." Abigail shakes her head, disbelieving. No, No, Brent would never leave me. You're lying. Shane sighs, moving to her desk. She taps a few keys on her computer, and a video begins to play on the large screen on the wall. It shows Brent, looking stressed and tired, talking to Shane. I can't do this anymore, video Brent says. Abby's powers, they're too much. She's not the sister I knew. It's better if I just go. Abigail stares at the screen, her mind reeling. It looks real, sounds real, but something feels off. This isn't right, she mutters. Brent wouldn't. I know it's hard to accept, Shane says, placing a comforting hand on Abigail's shoulder. But think about it. How long has Brent been carrying this burden? Taking care of you, protecting you from the DUP, from yourself. Everyone has a breaking point. Doubt creeps in, poisonous and insidious. Hasn't Abigail always feared this? That she was a burden to Brent, that her powers would eventually drive him away? What about the alarms? Abigail asks weakly. The lockdown. Shane's explanation is smooth, rehearsed. A test of our security systems. I'm sorry for the scare, but we can't be too careful with the DUP always sniffing around. Abigail sinks into a chair, her legs no longer able to support her. The neon energy that had been surging through her gutters out, leaving her feeling hollow. He really left, she whispers, tears stinging her eyes. Shane kneels beside her, voice full of false sympathy.
I'm so sorry, Abigail.
But you're not alone. We're your family now. We'll take care of you. As Shane pulls her into a hug, Abigail doesn't see the triumphant smirk that crosses the older woman's face. She's too lost in her grief, in the belief that the one person she trusted most in the world has abandoned her. Hours later, alone in her room, Abigail stares at the ceiling. Her eyes are dry now, all tears spent. In their place, a cold anger begins to grow. If Brent could leave her after everything they've been through, then she owes him nothing. She'll become what Shane wants her to be. She'll master her powers, become the weapon they've always feared. And she'll never let anyone close enough to hurt her again. As Seattle's neon-lit night presses against her window, Abigail makes a silent vow. She'll find Brent one day, and when she does, he'll regret ever walking away. Little does she know, in a dark cell buried deep beneath the compound, Brent is waking up. His head pounds, his vision blurry, but his first coherent thought is of his sister. Abby, he mumbles. Have to. Warn Abby. But there's no one to hear him. No one except the silent cameras watching his every move, feeding images back to Shane's private monitors. The game has changed, and the stakes have never been higher. Chapter 8, The Hunt begins. The Seattle night writhes with neon and shadow, a living canvas painted by city lights and creeping fog. Abigail crouches on a rooftop, her body humming with barely contained energy. It's been a week since Brent's disappearance, a week of sleepless nights and simmering rage. She's done waiting. Abigail takes a deep breath, letting the power flow through her. Her skin glows faintly, veins traced in luminescent blue. With each passing day, controlling her abilities becomes easier. The fear that once held her back has burned away, replaced by a cold determination. You're sure about this? Jenny's voice crackles through her earpiece, tense with worry. I have to find him, Abigail responds, her eyes scanning the streets below. He wouldn't have left without a word. Something's wrong, and I'm going to figure out what. She can almost hear Jenny's frown. And Shane. What if she finds out? Abigail's laugh is bitter. Let her. I'm done playing by her rules. Before Jenny can respond, Abigail spots her target, a nondescript van with blacked-out windows, the kind favoured by Shane's operatives for special deliveries. If Brent is still in the city, these are the people who would know. Abigail doesn't hesitate. She leaps from the rooftop, her body dissolving into a streak of brilliant light. The rush of power is intoxicating, the city blurring around her as she races through the air. She reforms directly in the van's path, her landing cracking the asphalt. The driver slams on the brakes, tires screeching in protest. What the F? The driver's curse is cut short as Abigail rips the door off its hinges. "Where's Brent?" she demands, neon energy crackling around her fists. The driver reaches for a weapon, but Abigail is faster. A blast of concentrated light sends him slumping against the steering wheel, unconscious. She turns her attention to the back of the van, tearing open the rear doors. Inside, huddled in fear, are three young people, conduits, judging by the power-dampening collars around their necks. Abigail's stomach churns. Brent was right. Shane isn't protecting conduits, she's selling them. "It's okay," she says, softening her voice. "I'm here to help." As she works to free the captives, a new sound cuts through the night, sirens, growing closer by the second. "Fetch," Jenny's panicked voice fills her ear. "Dup forces incoming, you need to get out of there." Abigail grits her teeth. She can't leave these people, but she can't fight the DUP head-on. "Not yet. Change of plans," she tells the freed conduits. "How do you feel about a light show?" Moments later, when the DUP vehicles screech round the corner, all they find is an empty van and a message burned into the pavement in glowing neon script: "We are not your property." Miles away, in a secret DUP facility, Augustine stares at a bank of monitors. Her face is impassive, but her eyes gleam with interest as she watches footage of Abigail's escape. "Impressive," a man's voice comments from behind her. "She's grown stronger since your last encounter." Augustine turns to face the speaker, Augustine Fitch, one of her most trusted operatives. "Indeed." And more reckless. "It's time to bring her in." Fitch raises an eyebrow. "You want me to capture her?" "No." Augustine's smile is cold. "I want you to recruit her." Back at Shane's compound, Abigail paces her room like a caged tiger. The rush of the night's events still courses through her veins, but with it comes a growing unease. She saved those conduits, yes, but she's no closer to finding Brent. A knock at her door interrupts her brooding. It's Jenny, her face pale with worry. "Are you insane?" Jenny hisses as soon as the door closes behind her. "Do you have any idea how many protocols you just violated?" Shane is furious. Abigail's eyes narrow. "Good. Let her be furious. I'm done being her puppet." Jenny runs a hand through her hair, exasperated. "Abby, I get that you're upset about Brent, but this... taking on Shane's operations, attracting the DUP's attention. It's suicide." "Then help me," Abigail pleads. "You have access to information. There must be something about where Brent could have gone." Jenny's expression softens. "Abby, I've looked. There's nothing." Maybe he really did just leave." The words hit Abigail like a physical blow. She turns away, staring out the window at the glittering cityscape. "He wouldn't," she whispers. But the conviction in her voice wavers. Jenny places a comforting hand on her shoulder. "I'm sorry. I know how much he means to you. But you have to be careful. The DUP, Shane. You're painting a target on your back." As if on cue, Abigail's phone buzzes with a message from Shane, my office. Now. Abigail steels herself, squaring her shoulders. Guess it's time to face the music. But when she arrives at Shane's office, she finds not anger, but calculated calm. Shane sits behind her desk, fingers steepled, watching Abigail with an unreadable expression. "Quite a performance tonight," Shane says coolly. "I must admit I'm impressed. Your control has improved significantly." Abigail tenses, waiting for the other shoe to drop. "If this is about the van," Shane waves a dismissive hand, "a minor setback. What interests me is your initiative. Your willingness to take risks." She stands, circling the desk to stand before Abigail. "I have a proposition for you. A chance to use your powers for something greater, to make a real difference for conduits everywhere." Abigail's suspicion wars with her curiosity. "What kind of proposition?" Shane's smile is sharp. "How would you like to take the fight directly to the DUP?" Before Abigail can respond, a commotion erupts outside the office. The door bursts open, and a man Abigail doesn't recognize strides in. He's tall, with greying hair and the bearing of a soldier. "I'm afraid that won't be possible," the man says, his voice calm but authoritative. "Abigail Walker, my name is Augustin Fitch. I'm here on behalf of the Department of Unified Protection. We need to talk." Abigail's powers flare instinctively, neon light dancing across her skin. She looks to Shane, expecting a fight, but the older woman's expression is unreadable. Fitch raises his hands in a placating gesture. "I'm not here to arrest you, Miss Walker. I'm here to offer you an opportunity. A chance to use your abilities to protect people, all people, conduit and human alike." Abigail's mind reels, the DUP offering her a job after everything they've done to people like her. It has to be a trap. But as she looks between Fitch and Shane, both watching her intently, Abigail realizes she's standing at a crossroads. Her choices now will shape not just her future, but the future of conduits everywhere. And somewhere out there, Brent is still missing, still needs her help. Abigail takes a deep breath, centering herself. The neon within her pulses, ready for whatever comes next. "All right," she says, her voice steady. "Let's talk." Chapter 9, Training Day. The early morning mist clings to Seattle's waterfront, shrouding the abandoned warehouse district in a ghostly pall. Abigail stands atop a decaying roof, her breath visible in the chill air. Beside her, Augustine Fitch surveys the makeshift training course below, a maze of shipping containers, rusted equipment, and hastily erected barriers. "Your objective," Fitch says, his voice crisp and professional, "is to reach the other side of the compound without touching the ground. Use your powers, but be precise. Collateral damage will cost you points." Abigail nods, adrenaline already coursing through her veins. It's been a week since she accepted Fitch's offer of training, a week of pushing her limits in ways she never thought possible. "And, Abigail," Fitch adds, a hint of warmth creeping into his tone, "remember to breathe. Your power flows easier when you're calm." She takes a deep breath, centering herself. The neon within her responds, a pleasant hum beneath her skin. "Go," Fitch commands. Abigail leaps from the roof, her body dissolving into light. She arcs through the air, reforming on top of a shipping container. Without pausing, she races across its surface, each step leaving a faint neon afterimage. A gap looms ahead, too wide to jump normally. Abigail doesn't hesitate. She focuses her energy downward, propelling herself into the air in a burst of luminescence. For a moment she's flying, the world a blur of motion and colour. She lands on a narrow pipe, balancing precariously. A mistake here would send her plummeting to the ground. But Abigail's control has improved dramatically under Fitch's tutelage. She runs along the pipe as easily as if it were a broad sidewalk, trailing neon light behind her. As she nears the end of the course, a series of holographic DUP soldiers flicker to life, their weapons trained on her. Abigail grins. This is the part she's been waiting for. She launches herself into the air, time seeming to slow as she unleashes her power. Precision blasts of neon energy strike each hologram in rapid succession. They flicker and vanish, leaving Abigail's path clear. With a final leap, she clears the last obstacle, landing gracefully at the designated finish point. The entire run has taken less than 2 minutes. Fitch appears beside her, a rare smile on his face. "Impressive," he says. "Your speed and accuracy have improved significantly, but more importantly, you're learning to think tactically, to use your environment to your advantage." Abigail beams at the praise, but a nagging thought tempers her elation. "It still feels strange," she admits. "Working with the DUP after spending so long running from you." Fitch's expression grows serious. "The DUP's mission is complex, Abigail. Yes, we've made mistakes, but our goal has always been to protect both conduits and regular humans, to prevent another event. The mention of the event sends a chill down Abigail's spine, triggering a memory she's tried hard to suppress. 7 years ago, the day of the event, 14-year-old Abigail huddles in the school basement, the world above shaking with the force of unexplained explosions. Around her, classmates whimper in fear. Teachers try to maintain calm, but their voices tremble. A blinding flash of light penetrates even the basement's thick walls. Abigail feels something shift inside her, a sudden awareness of energy she's never felt before. Across the room, a boy screams as his hands burst into flames. A girl begins to float, panicked sobs escaping her as she rises toward the ceiling. Chaos erupts. Some students run, others lash out with newfound abilities they can't control. Abigail presses herself into a corner, terrified and confused. She doesn't know it yet, but her own powers are lying dormant, waiting for the right catalyst to awaken. Outside, the city burns. The sky is filled with unnatural auroras, shimmering curtains of energy that pulse in time with the screams and explosions. Humanity is changing, evolving in a matter of moments, and the world will never be the same. Abigail blinks, the memory fading. She finds Fitch watching her closely, understanding in his eyes. "You were there," he says softly, "in Seattle when it happened." She nods, unable to speak for a moment. When she finds her voice, it's barely a whisper. "It was terrifying. People I knew suddenly changed. Some went mad with power, others couldn't handle it, and—" She trails off, the unspoken horrors hanging in the air between them. Fitch places a comforting hand on her shoulder. "That's why the DUP exists, Abigail, to prevent that kind of chaos from ever happening again. To help conduits like you learn to control your abilities, to use them responsibly. But the detainments, the experimentation." Abigail challenges, thinking of the evidence Jenny had shown her. Fitch sighs heavily. "There have been excesses, mistakes made out of fear. But that's changing. People like you, Abigail, are helping us find a better way." He turns, gesturing for her to follow. As they walk, Fitch begins to explain the broader picture, the different types of conduits, the ongoing research into the source of their powers, the delicate balance between protecting conduits and protecting the public from those who would misuse their abilities. Abigail listens, her mind racing. It's so much more complex than she ever imagined. The DUP isn't the monolithic evil she once believed, but it's not the benevolent protector Fitch paints it as either. The truth, as always, lies somewhere in the murky middle. As they reach the edge of the training grounds, Fitch turns to her, his expression grave. "There's something else you need to know, Abigail. Something about your brother." Abigail's heart skips a beat. "Brent, what about him?" Fitch hesitates, choosing his words carefully. "We have reason to believe he may have been taken by a group called the Occurrence. They're a shadowy organization, possibly connected to the origin of conduit powers. And they've been abducting both conduits and family members of conduits for months." The world seems to tilt beneath Abigail's feet. "Taken, but Shane said. She showed me a video of him leaving. Faked, most likely," Fitch says grimly. "Shane has connections to the Occurrence. We've been trying to prove it for months. Anger and fear war within Abigail. She's been played, manipulated by Shane from the beginning, and Brent. Brent is in danger because of her. We have to find him," she says, her voice tight with determination. "Whatever it takes." Fitch nods, a hint of approval in his eyes. "That's why I'm training you, Abigail, not just to control your powers, but to prepare you for what's coming. The fight against the Occurrence won't be easy, but with your abilities, we stand a chance." As the sun breaks through the morning mist, bathing the training grounds in golden light, Abigail feels a shift within herself. She's no longer just running, no longer simply reacting to the chaos around her. For the first time since her powers awakened, she has a purpose, a goal beyond mere survival. She will master her abilities. She will uncover the truth about the Occurrence. And she will find Brent, no matter the cost. the neon energy within her pulses, stronger than ever. Abigail Walker is done being a victim. It's time to become a hero. Chapter 10, Underworld Connections. The Crocodile, once a legendary music venue, now serves a different clientele. In the smoky depths of its renovated basement, Seattle's underworld gathers to trade secrets, make deals, and settle scores. It's the last place anyone would expect to find Abigail Walker, which is exactly why she's here. Abigail weaves through the crowd, her senses on high alert. She's ditched her usual attire for something more fitting, a leather jacket over a neon-patterned crop top, her hair styled in a punk undercut. The outfit serves a dual purpose, helping her blend in while also allowing easy access to the ambient light she needs to fuel her powers. At the bar, she catches the eye of the bartender, a burly man with intricate tattoos snaking up his arms. This is her contact, carefully cultivated over weeks of Fitch's intelligence gathering. "What'll it be?" the bartender growls as she approaches. Abigail leans in, pitching her voice low. "I hear you make a mean laser lemonade." The man's eyes narrow, then he gives an almost imperceptible nod. "Follow me." He leads her through a hidden door and down a narrow hallway. The music from the main room fades, replaced by the muffled sounds of something else, something that makes Abigail's skin crawl. They emerge onto a balcony overlooking a vast underground arena. Below, two conduits face off in a brutal fight, their powers clashing in a spectacular display. The crowd roars its approval, money changing hands as bets are placed and settled. "Jesus," Abigail breathes, horror and fascination warring within her. The bartender grunts. "Welcome to the real Seattle, kid. You sure you want to go down this rabbit hole?" Abigail steels herself, remembering Brent, remembering her mission. "I'm sure." He shrugs. "Your funeral. The lieutenant's box is over there. Good luck getting in." As the bartender retreats, Abigail surveys the scene. The lieutenant, Shane's right-hand man and her best lead on the occurrence, occupies a private box on the far side of the arena. Between her and it are dozens of hardened criminals, at least 2 conduit bouncers, and a sophisticated security system. Time to get creative. Abigail makes her way down to the arena floor, skirting the edge of the crowd. She focuses on the neon signs advertising various illegal services, drawing their energy into herself. The power thrums through her veins, begging for release. When she's in position, she makes her move. A precisely aimed blast of neon energy shorts out the main fuse box. The arena is plunged into darkness, chaos erupting as panicked voices fill the air. In the confusion, Abigail becomes light, streaking unseen towards the lieutenant's box. She reforms inside just as the emergency generators kick in, bathing the room in a red glow. The lieutenant, a lean, sharp-featured man, is already on his feet, a gun trained on her. "Who the hell are you?" he snarls. Abigail raises her hands, neon energy dancing between her fingers. Someone with questions about the occurrence. The lieutenant's eyes widen in recognition. "The neon girl. Shane's pet project." "I'm nobody's pet," Abigail growls. "Where's my brother? What does the occurrence want with him?" A cold smile spreads across the lieutenant's face. "Oh, you have no idea what you're mixed up in, do you? Your brother was just bait. It's you they want." Before Abigail can respond, the door bursts open. Shane strides in, flanked by heavily armed guards. Her eyes narrow as she takes in the scene. "Well, well," Shane drawls. "Isn't this cozy?" "Abigail, darling, I'm disappointed. I thought we had an understanding." Abigail's mind races. She's outnumbered, outgunned, but she still has one advantage. They don't know how much her powers have grown. "Funny," she says, buying time as she gathers her strength. "I was just about to say the same thing. Trafficking conduits, Shane. Using my brother as bait. That wasn't part of our deal." Shane's laugh is bitter. "Deals change, sweetheart. The occurrence made me an offer I couldn't refuse." "And you?" You're the grand prize. It happens in an instant. Shane gives a subtle nod, and her guards open fire, but Abigail is already moving, her body dissolving into light. She streaks around the room, neon blasts taking out the guards with surgical precision. As the last guard falls, Abigail reforms, panting slightly. The lieutenant cowers in a corner, but Shane stands her ground, a mixture of fear and admiration in her eyes. Impressive, Shane says softly. Fitch has taught you well. Abigail's eyes narrow. You knew, Shane shrugs. I suspected. The DUP has been a thorn in my side for too long, but that's all about to change.
She reaches slowly into her jacket, pulling out a small device.
This, she says, holding it up, contains everything. The occurrences plans, their research into conduit powers, the location of their main facility, including where they're keeping your precious Brent. Abigail's heart pounds. This is it. Everything she's been fighting for. But as she reaches for the device, Shane pulls it back. She chides. Nothing's free in this world, Abigail. I'll give you this information, but I want something in return. What? Abigail asks, dread pooling in her stomach. Shane's smile is razor-sharp. The lieutenant, the occurrence, wants him eliminated. He knows too much, has outlived his usefulness. You do this for me. The information is yours. The lieutenant's terrified whimper cuts through the tension. Abigail looks at him, a man who has doubtless committed countless crimes, who has been complicit in the suffering of who knows how many conduits. It would be so easy. One blast of her power, and she'd have everything she needs to save Brent. But could she live with herself afterward? Time seems to slow as Abigail weighs her options. The neon within her pulses, responding to her turmoil. She thinks of Brent, of all the innocent suffering at the hands of the occurrence. She thinks of Fitch, of the ideals he's tried to instill in her. In the end, it comes down to a simple question. What kind of hero does she want to be? Abigail makes her choice. In a blur of motion, she grabs the device from Shane's hand. Before anyone can react, she unleashes a massive pulse of neon energy. The electronics in the room fry instantly, including the device and Shane's backup copies. No! Shane screams, lunging for her. But Abigail is already gone, her body transformed into light. She streaks out of the arena, through the panicked crowd, and into the Seattle night. She doesn't stop until she reaches the waterfront, reforming on a deserted pier. As the adrenaline fades, the magnitude of what she's done hits her. She's burned her bridges, destroyed her best lead on finding Brent, but she's also refused to cross a line and to become the kind of person who kills in cold blood. As dawn breaks over the city, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Abigail makes a silent vow. She will find Brent, she will stop the occurrence, but she'll do it on her own terms, without compromising who she is. The path ahead is uncertain, fraught with danger. But for the first time since her powers awakened, Abigail Walker knows exactly who she is and what she stands for. The neon within her pulses, stronger than ever. Whatever comes next, she's ready. Chapter 11, The Crocodile. The crocodile thrums with frenetic energy, bodies writhing on the dance floor as strobing lights paint the scene in disorienting flashes of colour. Abigail weaves through the crowd, her senses on high alert, the neon within her pulses in time with the pounding bass, eager for release. She's here on a tip from Jenny, who's been feeding her information despite the risk. According to her source, a member of the occurrence is meeting a potential buyer here tonight, someone looking to acquire conduit test subjects. The thought makes Abigail's stomach churn. Is this what happened to Brent? Is he nothing more than a lab rat to these people? She pushes the anger down, focusing on the mission. Find the occurrence agent. Extract information about Brent's whereabouts. Get out. Simple. Of course, nothing is ever simple. Abigail spots her target at the bar, a well-dressed man with a briefcase handcuffed to his wrist. She's about to make her move when a familiar face catches her eye. Shane. Their eyes lock across the crowded room. For a moment, time seems to stand still. Then all hell breaks loose. Shane shouts an order, and suddenly Abigail is surrounded by armed men materializing from the crowd. Civilians scream and scatter, realizing too late that they've stumbled into something far more dangerous than a normal night out. "End of the line, Fetch!" Shane calls out, using the code name that's become Abigail's alter ego. "You've been a thorn in my side for too long." Abigail doesn't waste breath on a reply. She acts. Neon energy explodes outward from her body in a dazzling shockwave. The closest attackers are thrown back, their weapons clattering to the floor. Abigail uses the moment of confusion to launch herself into the air, her body dissolving into light. She reforms on the second-floor balcony, unleashing precision blasts at Shane's men below. Each shot finds its mark with uncanny accuracy, disarming but not killing. Abigail's control has improved dramatically, allowing her to modulate the intensity of her powers. "Impressive," Shane's voice cuts through the chaos. The older woman ascends the stairs, a dangerous glint in her eye. "But let's see how you handle this." She snaps her fingers and two figures step forward. Conduits, Abigail realizes with a sinking feeling. One man's hands crackle with electricity, while the woman beside him seems to shimmer, her form blurring at the edges. "Nothing personal," the electric conduit growls. "Just business." He unleashes a barrage of lightning bolts. Abigail dives and rolls, the air around her superheated by near misses. She retaliates with rapid-fire neon blasts, but the other conduit, some kind of phaser, simply lets the attacks pass through her incorporeal form. Abigail grits her teeth. Time to get creative. She vaults over the balcony railing, free-falling towards the dance floor below. At the last second, she transforms into light, streaking across the room in a dizzying series of ricochets. The electric conduit's attacks go wide, decimating the bar and sound system in a shower of sparks. Abigail reforms behind her opponents, channeling her power into a concentrated beam. The phaser conduit tries to dodge, but Abigail anticipates the move. Her attack catches the woman mid-phase, disrupting her powers and sending her crumpling to the floor. One down, one to go. The electric conduit roars in fury, unleashing a massive surge that lights up the entire club. Abigail raises her hands instinctively, expecting pain. Instead, she feels a rush of energy. Her body absorbs the electricity, transmuting it into neon power. "Oh, hell yes!" Abigail grins, her entire form glowing with amplified energy. What follows is a light show that would put any rave to shame. Neon and electricity clash in a spectacular display, reducing much of the club's interior to smoking rubble. But Abigail's newfound power boost gives her the edge. With a final, massive blast, she sends the electric conduit flying through a wall and out onto the street beyond. In the sudden quiet, Abigail turns to face Shane, but the occurrence agent is already making a break for it, briefcase in hand. "No!" Abigail shouts. "She can't lose this lead." She gives chase, both of them racing through the club's back corridors. Shane is surprisingly agile for her age, but she's no match for Abigail's powers. A precisely aimed neon blast catches Shane in the back, sending her sprawling. Abigail approaches cautiously, neon energy crackling around her fists. "It's over, Shane. Tell me where Brent is." Shane laughs, a harsh, bitter sound. "You still don't get it, do you? Your brother was never the end game. He was bait, nothing more." "What are you talking about?" Abigail demands, her heart pounding. Shane's smile is all teeth. "The occurrence doesn't want him. They want you, Fetch, your powers. There's something special, unique, and they'll do anything to harness that power for themselves." Abigail's mind reels.
"But the trafficking, the other conduits."
"A smoke screen," Shane explains, slowly getting to her feet. "Meant to hide their true purpose. Building an army of conduits, yes, but with you as the ultimate weapon." The briefcase lies forgotten on the floor between them. Shane's eyes flick towards it and Abigail tenses. "Everything you want to know is in there," Shane says. "Brent's location, the occurrence's plans, all of it. But I wonder, are you prepared for the truth? Abigail hesitates, torn between her desperate need for answers and the nagging feeling that she's walking into a trap. In that moment of indecision, Shane makes her move. She lunges for the briefcase, but Abigail is faster. A neon blast sends Shane crashing into a stack of equipment cases. When the dust settles, Shane is unconscious, but still breathing. Abigail approaches the briefcase with trepidation. It could be booby-trapped, or worse. But she's come too far to turn back now. With a deep breath, she releases the locks and opens the case. Inside is a single file folder and a strange device, some kind of high-tech tracking system. Abigail's hands shake as she opens the folder. Photos spill out. Surveillance shots of her mixed with technical diagrams of her powers. And there, paper-clipped to a document labelled Project Daybreak, is a photo of Brent. He's alive, haggard and clearly being held against his will, but alive. Abigail's relief is short-lived as she scans the document. Phrases jump out at her: genetic compatibility, power amplification, Phase 2 trials. The full horror of the occurrence's plans begins to dawn on her. They don't just want to study her powers. They want to replicate them, amplify them, and they're willing to sacrifice anything or anyone to do it, including Brent. The sound of approaching sirens snaps Abigail back to the present. She quickly pockets the most crucial documents and the tracking device. As much as she wants to take Shane in, to make her pay for her role in all this, there's no time. Abigail races out of the club just as DUP vehicles screech to a halt outside. She becomes light, streaking away into the night sky. Only when she's put several miles between herself and the crocodile does she allow herself to reform, collapsing onto a rooftop. As she catches her breath, Abigail's mind races. She has a lead on Brent now, yes, but she also has confirmation that she herself is the ultimate target. Every move she makes to save her brother could be playing right into the occurrence's hands. The tracking device feels heavy in her pocket. It's the key to finding Brent, but using it could lead her into a trap. And even if she does rescue him, what then? How can she keep him safe when she herself is the reason he's in danger? As dawn breaks over Seattle, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Abigail Walker faces the most difficult decision of her life. The path ahead is fraught with danger, filled with impossible choices. But one thing is certain, nothing will ever be the same again. Chapter 12. Storms and Sewers. Seattle's sky roils with angry clouds, intermittent flashes of lightning illuminating the city in stark electric bursts. Rain lashes down in sheets, turning streets into rushing rivers and reducing visibility to near zero. It's the kind of storm that sends most people scurrying for shelter. Abigail Walker isn't most people. She races across rooftops, her neon-infused body a bright streak against the gloomy backdrop. The rain sizzles as it hits her energized form, creating a steam trail in her wake. Behind her, the persistent whump, whump of helicopter blades cuts through the storm's fury. Dup forces have been on her tail since she left the crocodile, their pursuit relentless despite the worsening weather. Abigail's mind races as fast as her feet. The tracking device from Shane's briefcase is a lead weight in her pocket, its potential to lead her to Brent tempered by the very real possibility of it being a trap. A spotlight from the helicopter catches her, momentarily blinding. Abigail curses, losing her footing on the rain's slick roof. She tumbles, managing to transform into light at the last second. She streaks down the side of the building, reforming in a narrow alley. "This is the Department of Unified Protection," a voice booms from the helicopter's loudspeaker. "Surrender now, conduit, or we will use lethal force." "Like hell," Abigail mutters. She needs to lose them to find somewhere to regroup and plan her next move. Her eyes land on a manhole cover, partially dislodged by the torrential rain. The underground. It's risky. Her powers will be at a disadvantage away from neon light sources, but it's her best shot at escape. With a grunt of effort, Abigail heaves the cover aside and drops into the darkness below. The sudden silence is almost as disorienting as the pitch blackness. Abigail summons a faint neon glow, illuminating her immediate surroundings. She's in a vast tunnel, part of Seattle's sprawling underground network. The air is thick with the smell of damp earth and decay. Abigail starts moving, guided by an old map of the tunnels Fitch had her memorized during training. If she's right, there should be an access point near Pioneer Square, close to one of Jenny's safe houses. As she navigates the labyrinthine passages, Abigail's mind wanders to Brent. Is he in a place like this? Cold, dark, alone. The thought spurs her on, pushing her to move faster despite the treacherous footing. A noise behind her brings Abigail up short, footsteps echoing off the tunnel walls. The DUP must have followed her down. She picks up her pace, no longer worrying about stealth. The tunnels twist and turn, branching off in confusing arrays. More than once, Abigail has to backtrack, precious seconds ticking away as her pursuers draw closer. Rounding a corner, Abigail skids to a halt. The tunnel ahead has partially collapsed, a trickle of water from above hinting at the storm's intensity. It's a tight squeeze, but she might be able to make it through. As she starts to pick her way across the debris, a shout echoes from behind. Freeze! Hands where we can see them. Abigail turns slowly. 3 figures emerge from the gloom, their DUP armor gleaming dully in the faint light. But something's off. These aren't standard-issue uniforms and the patches on their shoulders. You're not dupe, Abigail realizes aloud. Seattle PD, what are you doing down here? The lead officer, a grizzled man with hard eyes, steps forward. Smart girl. Now, why don't you make this easy on yourself and come with us? There are some people very interested in meeting you. Abigail's eyes narrow. Let me guess. The occurrence. The man's slight flinch is all the confirmation she needs. Corrupt cops, working for the very organization she's fighting against. How deep does this conspiracy go? Last chance, the officer warns, raising his weapon. Come quietly, or we'll take you by force. Abigail weighs her options. In this enclosed space, with limited light sources, her powers are at a disadvantage. But she's come too far to give up now. Sorry, boys, she says, a hint of a smirk playing on her lips. I don't do quiet. She moves like lightning, diving for the partially collapsed section of tunnel. A hail of gunfire erupts behind her, bullets ricocheting off stone. Abigail twists midair, becoming light for a split second to squeeze through the gap. She hits the ground running on the other side, not daring to look back. The sound of pursuit is muffled now, but still too close for comfort. Abigail pushes herself harder, her lungs burning as she races through the underground maze. She's close to the exit now, she can feel it. Suddenly, the tunnel opens up into a vast chamber. Abigail skids to a stop, momentarily awestruck. It's an old underground market, long abandoned but still hauntingly beautiful. Faint light filters in from grates far above, illuminating crumbling storefronts and rusted kiosks. The wonder is short-lived. The corrupt officers burst into the chamber behind her, weapons raised. End of the line, conduit, the lead officer snarls. No more running. Abigail's mind races. There's more light here, more fuel for her powers. But taking on 3 armed opponents in an enclosed space is still a massive risk. Time seems to slow as Abigail makes her choice. She reaches deep within herself, tapping into the wellspring of neon energy at her core. The power surges through her, stronger than ever before. With a primal scream, Abigail unleashes her full potential. Neon light explodes outward in a dazzling nova. The officers are thrown back, their weapons flying from their hands. Abigail doesn't stop there. She becomes a whirlwind of light and energy, bouncing off walls and striking with pinpoint accuracy. In a matter of seconds, it's over. The corrupt cops lie unconscious, their armor smoking from the intensity of Abigail's attacks. Panting heavily, Abigail approaches the fallen men. Part of her wants to leave them here, to let the underground claim them, but she's better than that. She's fighting to protect people, not abandon them to their fate. With a sigh, she drags the unconscious officers to a relatively safe area of the chamber. As she's securing them, a glint of metal catches her eye. One of the men has dropped a badge, not a police badge, but something else. Abigail picks it up, her breath catching as she examines it. It's an access card for a facility she's never heard of, Gable Research Center. A chill runs down her spine as she remembers a detail from the files she stole. Project Daybreak, the occurrences planned for her, was based out of a place called Gable. This is it. This has to be where they're holding Brent. With renewed determination, Abigail pockets the access card and makes her way to the chamber's exit. As she emerges into the storm-lashed streets of Pioneer Square, her resolve has never been stronger. She knows where to go now. She has a way in. It's time to end this, once and for all. But as Abigail melts into the rainy night, becoming one with the neon-reflected puddles, a nagging doubt lingers. The occurrence wants her. They've gone to extraordinary lengths to manipulate her into this very position. Is she walking into exactly the trap they've laid? Only one way to find out. Chapter 13, The East Side Hideout. The Gable Research Center looms before Abigail, a stark monolith of glass and steel rising from Seattle's industrial district. Rain continues to fall, a fine mist that softens the harsh lines of the building and refracts the glow of streetlights into a hazy aura. Abigail crouches on a nearby rooftop, her body thrumming with nervous energy. This is it, the culmination of weeks of searching, fighting, and uncovering conspiracies. If the intel is right, Brent should be inside. She takes a deep breath, centering herself. The neon within her pulses in response, eager for release. "You sure about this?" Jenny's voice crackles through her earpiece. The hacker has been monitoring security feeds, providing Abigail with a crucial edge. "No," Abigail admits. "But I'm out of options. Brent's in there, I can feel it." Jenny sighs. "All right, but be careful. This place is crawling with more than just Shane's usual goons. I'm seeing some serious firepower." Abigail nods, though Jenny can't see her. "Got it, I'm going in." She stands, rolling her shoulders to loosen tense muscles. Then, with a running start, she leaps from the rooftop. For a heart-stopping moment, she's in free fall. Then her powers kick in, transforming her into a streak of brilliant neon light. Abigail arcs through the air, aiming for a narrow maintenance access on the building's roof. At the last second, she reforms, her momentum carrying her through the small opening. She lands in a crouch, already alert for any signs of detection. The hallway stretches before her, sterile and white. No alarms blare, no shouts of discovery echo. So far, so good. Abigail moves swiftly but cautiously, guided by Jenny's directions through the labyrinthine facility. She passes laboratories filled with strange equipment, holding cells with two-way mirrors and rooms that look disturbingly like operating theaters. "What the hell are they doing here?" she mutters, a chill running down her spine. "You don't want to know," Jenny replies grimly. "But whatever it is, it's big. The power draw for this place is off the charts." Abigail's about to respond when a noise ahead stops her in her tracks. Voices growing louder, she ducks into an alcove, her heart pounding. Two men in lab coats walk past, deep in conversation. "The latest test results are promising," one says. "Subject 37 Feet's genetic markers are showing increased compatibility with the neon strain." The other nods excitedly. "Excellent! If this pans out, we'll be ready for Phase 3 ahead of schedule. The director will be pleased." As their voices fade, Abigail emerges from hiding, her mind reeling. Genetic markers, neon strain. What are they doing to people here? "Jenny," she whispers, "did you get that?" "Yeah," Jenny's voice is tight with worry. "Abby, I don't like this. Maybe we should call Fitch, get some backup." Abigail shakes her head. "No time. I have to find Brent now." She pushes forward, her sense of urgency growing with each step. Finally, she reaches a heavy security door. The access card she took from the corrupt cop beeps green, and the door slides open with a soft hiss. Abigail steps inside and freezes. The room is massive, filled with row upon row of containment pods. Each one holds a person, some unconscious, others awake and clearly terrified. Conduits, Abigail realizes with horror. Dozens of them. "Oh my God," she breathes. "What? What is it?" Jenny demands. Before Abigail can respond, a slow clap echoes through the chamber. She whirls to see Shane emerging from the shadows, flanked by heavily armed guards. "Bravo, Fetch," Shane says, her smile cold and predatory. "I knew you'd find your way here eventually, though I must admit I'm impressed by your timing." Abigail's hands flare with neon energy. "Where's Brent?" she demands. Shane's laugh is bitter. "Still so focused on your brother? Don't you see the bigger picture yet? This is about so much more than one insignificant human." "He's not here," Abigail realizes, her heart sinking. This was all a trap. "Oh, it's much more than that," Shane corrects her. "It's the next step in human evolution. And you, my dear, are the key to unlocking it all." She gestures to the containment pods. "These conduits, they're nothing compared to you, pale imitations of true power. But with your DNA, your unique genetic makeup, we can create an army unlike anything the world has ever seen." Abigail's mind races, pieces falling into place. The tests, the talk of genetic compatibility. They've been using her brother, using other conduits, all in an attempt to replicate and enhance her powers. "You're insane," she says, backing away. "I'll never help you." Shane's smile widens. "My dear, who said you had a choice?" At her signal, the guards open fire, but Abigail is already moving, her body dissolving into light. She streaks across the room, neon blasts taking out guards with surgical precision. The battle that ensues is chaos incarnate. Abigail bounces from wall to wall, a dizzying blur of light and energy. Shane's enforcers, clearly enhanced beyond normal human capabilities, put up a fierce fight. Containment pods crack and shatter in the crossfire, alarms blaring as the facility goes into full lockdown. Through it all, Abigail pushes herself harder than ever before. She can feel her powers growing, evolving in response to the desperate situation. New abilities manifest in the heat of battle. She can now create decoys of herself, confusing her enemies, and her neon blasts can be modulated from concussive force to pinpoint precision. But even as she fights, Abigail's mind is working overtime. She needs to end this, to escape with as much information as possible. And she needs to free these captive conduits. In a moment of clarity, she spots a central control panel. With a burst of speed, she races towards it, dodging attacks from all sides. "Jenny!" she shouts into her comm. "I'm sending you a data dump. Get ready." Her hands fly over the controls, using skills Fitch taught her to initiate a complete system download. At the same time, she triggers the emergency release for all containment pods. The room erupts into further chaos as confused and terrified conduits stumble from their prisons. Shane screams in frustration, ordering her men to recapture the subjects. "Download complete." Jenny's voice is triumphant in Abigail's ear. "Abby, you need to get out of there now." Abigail doesn't need to be told twice. With a final massive blast of neon energy that sends Shane and her remaining forces flying, she makes a break for the exit. She races through the facility, alarms blaring and sprinklers dousing everything in sight. Behind her, she can hear the sounds of other conduits fighting, escaping. She silently wishes them luck. Finally, Abigail bursts out of the building and into the rainy Seattle night. She doesn't stop running, doesn't look back until she's miles away, collapsing onto a deserted rooftop. As she catches her breath, the full weight of what she's discovered settles over her. The occurrence isn't just trafficking conduits, they're trying to create them, to build an army. And she, Abigail Walker, is at the center of it all. Brent is still out there, still in danger. But now Abigail understands that this is bigger than just her brother. The fate of all conduits, maybe of the entire world, hangs in the balance. As dawn breaks over Seattle, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Abigail makes a silent vow. She will find Brent. She will stop the occurrence. And she will do whatever it takes to protect those who can't protect themselves. The neon within her pulses, stronger than ever. Whatever comes next, Abigail Walker is ready. Chapter 14. Conduit Underground. The abandoned subway tunnel stretches before Abigail, its walls slick with moisture and years of neglect. Her neon-infused hand casts an eerie glow, throwing long shadows that dance and twist with each step. She's following coordinates Jenny decrypted from the Gable Research Center data, leading her deep into Seattle's forgotten underground. As she rounds a bend, Abigail stops short. The tunnel opens into a vast chamber, and her breath catches at the sight. The space is alive with light and color. Conduits of all ages move about, their various powers creating a kaleidoscope of energy. Ice crystals form intricate patterns on one wall, while vines and flowers bloom impossibly from cracks in the concrete. In one corner, a group practices what looks like energy manipulation, their hands weaving complex patterns in the air. "Welcome to Haven," a voice says behind her. Abigail whirls, neon flaring instinctively. She finds herself face to face with a woman about her age, with close-cropped hair and eyes that shift color like an oil slick. The woman raises her hands placatingly. "Easy there, Fetch, we're all friends here." Abigail lowers her hands but remains wary. "How do you know that name?" The woman smirks. "Word travels fast in our circles." "I'm Mirage. Come on, there's someone who wants to meet you." As Mirage leads her through the chamber, Abigail can't help but stare. Conduits of all types work and live together here, using their powers openly and without fear. It's unlike anything she's ever seen. "How long has this place existed?" Abigail asks, her voice hushed with wonder. "Since the event," Mirage replies. "When conduits started manifesting, when the DUP started hunting us, we needed somewhere safe. Haven is more than just a hideout. It's a community. They approach an area sectioned off by shimmering force fields. An elderly man sits cross-legged in the center, his eyes closed in meditation. As they draw near, his eyes open, revealing irises that glow with an inner light. "Abigail Walker," he says, his voice surprisingly strong. "I've been expecting you. I am Nexus." Abigail feels a strange resonance within her, as if her powers are responding to his presence. "You're like me?" she asks hesitantly. Nexus smiles. "In a way, my abilities allow me to connect with other conduits to sense their powers and even enhance them temporarily. But you, Abigail, you're something special." He gestures for her to sit. As she does, Mirage nods respectfully and steps away, leaving them in privacy. "You've come seeking answers," Nexus continues. "About your brother, about the occurrence. But I sense there are questions you haven't even thought to ask yet." Abigail nods, a lump forming in her throat. I don't understand why I'm so important to them, why my powers are different." Nexus's expression grows serious. "The neon that flows through you is more than just energy, Abigail. It's potential in its purest form. The ability to transform, to become something beyond the sum of your parts. The occurrence believes this power can be replicated, enhanced, weaponized. But why me?" Abigail presses. "There must be other neon conduits out there." "There are," Nexus confirms, "but none with your particular genetic makeup. You see, Abigail, your parents were part of the original occurrence research team. The revelation hits Abigail like a physical blow." "What? No, that's not. They were normal. They died when I was young." Nexus shakes his head sadly. "They were made to forget, their memories altered to protect the project. But their work, it changed them on a genetic level, and that change was passed on to you." Abigail's mind reels. Her whole life, her very existence tied to the organization she's been fighting against. "So I'm what?" "Some kind of experiment." "You are so much more than that," Nexus says firmly. "You are the key to understanding conduit powers as a whole. And that makes you incredibly dangerous to those who would exploit us. As the implications sink in, Abigail feels a surge of anger and determination. Then we fight back. We use Haven, gather all the conduits we can, and take down the occurrence once and for all. Nexus's smile is sad. It's not that simple, I'm afraid. Many here are refugees, traumatized by what they've endured. They're not soldiers, Abigail. And escalating the conflict could bring the full might of the DUP down on us all. Frustration builds within Abigail. So we just hide. Let them keep experimenting on people, keep hunting us. Of course not, Nexus says calmly. We resist in our own ways. We rescue conduits when we can, disrupt occurrence operations, feed information to sympathetic DUP agents like your friend Fitch. But open war, that we cannot risk. Abigail stands pacing restlessly. I can't just sit back. My brother is still out there. And now that I know the truth about my parents, about what I am, I have to do something. Nexus nods understanding. Your path is your own to choose, Abigail, but know that you are not alone. Haven will always be open to you, and there are those here who would stand with you if asked. As if on cue, Mirage reappears. Sounds like you could use a guide in the conduit underground, she says with a grin. Count me in. Abigail looks between them, a mix of emotions swirling within her. Gratitude for their acceptance, fear of the responsibility they're placing on her, and a growing sense of purpose. Thank you, she says finally. Both of you. I need some time to process all this. But knowing there's a place like Haven, people like you, it changes things. Nexus rises, placing a hand on her shoulder. As he does, Abigail feels a surge of energy, her powers amplifying momentarily. Remember, Abigail, your greatest strength lies not in your powers, but in your heart. The choices you make, the connections you forge. These will determine the course of what's to come. As Abigail prepares to leave Haven, her mind is a whirlwind of new information and possibilities. The existence of this underground network changes the game entirely, but with it comes new complications, new responsibilities. She thinks of Brent, still out there somewhere, counting on her. She thinks of the conduits in Haven, living in fear of discovery. She thinks of the occurrence, of her parents' involvement, of the power sleeping within her own genes. The path ahead is more uncertain than ever. But as Abigail steps back into the darkened tunnels, Mirage at her side, and the memory of Haven's light still fresh in her mind, she feels a newfound sense of purpose. She is Fetch, neon conduit, sister fugitive, and now reluctant symbol of hope for an entire hidden community. Whatever challenges lie ahead, she'll face them with the strength of her new allies and the fire of her own conviction. The neon within her pulses resonating with the energy of Haven. Abigail Walker is no longer alone in her fight. And that makes all the difference. Chapter 15. The DUP Facility. The DUP research facility looms before Abigail, a fortress of concrete and steel rising from the outskirts of Seattle. Floodlights sweep the perimeter, and the air thrums with the energy of power-dampening fields. It's a place designed to contain and study conduits, a place Abigail once feared above all else. Now, she's walking straight into its maw. You sure about this? Mirage's voice crackles through her earpiece. The shapeshifter is providing backup, ready to create diversions if needed. Abigail takes a deep breath, centering herself. No. But Nexus's intel is solid. If we want answers about what the DUP knows about the occurrence, this is where we'll find them. She can almost hear Mirage's frown. Just be careful in there, Fetch. This place gives me the creeps. Abigail nods, though her companion can't see it. With a final check of her gear, including a power-dampening shield courtesy of Haven's tech wizards, she makes her move. Becoming a streak of neon light, Abigail arcs over the outer fence. She reforms in a blind spot between security cameras, her heart pounding. So far, so good. The shield is working, masking her conduit signature from the facility's sensors. She makes her way through the compound, using the stealth techniques Fitch taught her. It's strange, using those lessons to infiltrate the very organization he works for. But Abigail pushes the thought aside. She can't afford distractions now. Finally, she reaches her target, a heavily secured server room deep within the facility. The door requires both a keycard and biometric scan. Luckily, Abigail came prepared. She pulls out a device given to her by one of Haven's hackers. It interfaces with the security panel, cycling through encrypted access codes. After what feels like an eternity, the light turns green. Abigail slips inside, letting out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. Banks of servers hum around her, blinking lights casting an eerie glow. Abigail approaches a terminal, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she initiates the data extraction. As information scrolls across the screen, Abigail's eyes widen in horror. It's worse than they imagined. The DUP isn't just containing conduits, they're actively experimenting on them, trying to replicate and weaponize their powers. And there, buried in the files, is a name that makes her blood run cold: Project Daybreak. The very project the Occurrence was working on, the one centered around her unique abilities. "Oh my God!" Abigail breathes. "They're working together." Suddenly alarms blare to life. Red emergency lights bathe the room in a hellish glow. Abigail curses, realizing her power-dampening shield must have failed. "Mirage!" she shouts into her comm. "I've been made." Initiating Plan B. She doesn't wait for a response. Grabbing the extracted data, Abigail bursts out of the server room. All pretense of stealth is gone now. It's time to run. DUP soldiers pour into the hallway, their weapons trained on her. Surrender. Conduit. One shouts, "You have nowhere to go." Abigail grins, feeling the neon surge within her. "Wanna bet what follows is chaos incarnate." Abigail becomes a whirlwind of light and energy, bouncing off walls and striking with devastating precision. Her time in Haven, training with other conduits, has expanded her abilities in ways she's only beginning to understand. She races through the facility, leaving a trail of destruction in her wake. Neon blasts short out power systems, plunging entire sections into darkness. She phases through walls, appearing and disappearing faster than the eye can track. But the DUP is prepared for conduits. Concrete barriers spring up, trying to box her in. Soldiers with power-dampening gear press their attack. Abigail finds herself cornered in a large atrium, surrounded on all sides. As the soldiers close in, time seems to slow. Abigail feels the neon within her, pulsing in time with her racing heart. She thinks of Brent, of the conduits in Haven counting on her, of all she's learned about her own origins. Something shifts inside her. The neon isn't just energy anymore, it's an extension of her very being. With a primal scream, Abigail releases her power in a way she never has before. A nova of pure neon energy explodes outward. DUP soldiers are thrown back, their weapons and armor shorting out. The concrete barriers crumble to dust. For a moment, the entire facility goes dark. When emergency power kicks in, Abigail is gone. She streaks across the compound faster than thought, a comet of brilliant light arcing into the night sky. She doesn't stop until she's miles away, finally allowing herself to reform on a deserted rooftop. As she catches her breath, the magnitude of what she's discovered and what she's done hits her. The DUP and the Occurrence working together, the extent of their experimentation on conduits, and her own powers evolving in ways she never thought possible. "Fetch! Fetch, come in!" Mirage's frantic voice fills her ear. "Are you okay? What happened in there?" Abigail takes a shaky breath. "I'm alive, but Mirage!" "Everything's changed. We need to gather everyone. Haven, Fitch, everyone we can trust. This is bigger than we ever imagined." As she looks out over the Seattle skyline, Abigail knows nothing will ever be the same. The lines between friend and foe have blurred. The stakes have never been higher. But as the neon pulses within her, Stronger and more in tune with her will than ever before, Abigail feels a grim determination settle over her. Whatever comes next, she'll be ready. The real fight is just beginning. Chapter 16, Fitch's Betrayal. Rain lashes against the windows of the abandoned warehouse, the storm outside mirroring the turmoil in Abigail's heart. She paces restlessly, neon energy crackling at her fingertips. Around her, the leaders of Haven's underground network and her closest allies gather. Their faces grave as they process the information she's brought back from the DUP facility. If what you're saying is true, Nexus says slowly, then the corruption goes deeper than we ever imagined. Mirage nods, her form shimmering with barely contained anger. The DUP working with the occurrence. It's a nightmare scenario. Abigail stops pacing, facing the group. We need to act now. Before they can, the warehouse door crashes open, cutting her off. Augustine Fitch strides in, flanked by heavily armed DARPy soldiers. I'm afraid that won't be possible, Fitch says, his voice cold and hard. Abigail's heart drops. Fitch, what are you doing? His smile is bitter. My job, Abigail. The job I've always been doing. Realization dawns, horror and betrayal washing over her. You're with them. You've been with the occurrence this whole time. Fitch nods almost regretfully. Since the beginning. I'm sorry it had to come to this, truly. I had hoped you would see reason, join us willingly. Nexus steps forward, his eyes glowing with barely contained power. You will not take her. The warehouse erupts into chaos. Haven conduits unleash their powers, clashing with the DUP forces. Mirage becomes a whirlwind of shifting forms, sowing confusion among the enemy ranks. But Fitch is heading straight for Abigail. You don't understand, he shouts over the din of battle. What we're doing is necessary. The power you possess, it could change everything. Abigail backs away, her mind reeling. Every lesson, every moment of trust. It was all a lie. I trusted you, she says, her voice breaking. You were supposed to help me find Brent. Fitch's expression hardens. Brent was a means to an end, a way to control you, to guide you towards your true potential. Rage surges through Abigail, the neon within her responding to her fury. He's my brother. He's collateral damage, Fitch counters coldly. In the grand scheme of what we're trying to achieve, one life is insignificant. Something snaps inside Abigail. With a scream of pure anguish, she unleashes her power. Neon energy explodes outward, sending Fitch flying back. The concrete floor cracks beneath her feet, spiderwebbing outward as her power surges uncontrollably. Fitch struggles to his feet, genuine fear flashing in his eyes for the first time. Abigail, stop. You don't know what you're capable of. No, she snarls, advancing on him. You don't know what I'm capable of. What follows is a battle unlike anything Abigail has experienced before. Fitch, it turns out, has conduit abilities of his own, the power to absorb and redirect energy. Every blast of neon she throws at him is caught and hurled back, transformed into searing beams of concentrated force. They tear through the warehouse, their clash reducing the building to rubble around them. Abigail pushes herself to the limit, drawing on every technique she's learned, every ounce of raw power within her. But Fitch matches her move for move, his years of experience showing in every calculated strike. You're holding back, Fitch taunts as they face off amidst the destruction. You're afraid of your own potential. Afraid of what you might become if you truly let go. Abigail grits her teeth, knowing there's truth in his words. She's always held part of herself in check, terrified of losing control completely. Let go, Abigail, Fitch urges, his voice almost gentle. Embrace what you are. Join us, and together we can reshape the world. For a moment, Abigail wavers. The promise of answers, of purpose, of an end to the constant fear and running. It's tempting, so tempting. But then she thinks of Brent, of the conduits in Haven looking to her for hope, of her parents, their memories erased, their lives stolen by the very organization Fitch serves. No, she says, her voice steady and sure. I know exactly who I am. With that declaration, something shifts within her. The neon responds not as a separate force, but as an extension of her very being. Abigail feels her consciousness expand, encompassing every particle of light around her. She becomes pure energy, a being of radiant neon stretching across the demolished warehouse. Fitch's attacks pass harmlessly through her now incorporeal form. His eyes widen in awe and terror as Abigail's luminous form towers over him. "This ends now!" Abigail's voice resonates, otherworldly and powerful. With a thought, she encases Fitch in a cocoon of neon energy. He struggles, trying to absorb and redirect it, but the power is too vast, too pure. Slowly, inexorably, his own abilities are overwhelmed. As Fitch slumps to the ground, unconscious, Abigail allows herself to reform. The warehouse is in ruins around them, the battle with the DUP forces long since spilled out into the surrounding streets. Mirage appears at her side, battered but alive. "Abby, I've never seen anything like it." Abigail nods, still processing what she's done, what she's become. "Neither have I." As sirens wail in the distance and the enormity of what's happened sinks in, Abigail knows there's no going back. Fitch's betrayal has changed everything. The lines between friend and foe have blurred beyond recognition. But as she looks at her hands, still glowing faintly with residual energy, Abigail feels a new sense of purpose. She's glimpsed the true extent of her powers now, and with that knowledge comes responsibility. "We need to move," she says to Mirage. "Gather everyone we can trust. This isn't over." As they flee into the rainy Seattle night, Abigail's mind races. Fitch may be defeated, but the occurrence is still out there. Brent is still missing. And now, with her newfound abilities, she's more of a target than ever. But she's also more prepared, more determined. Abigail Walker entered that warehouse questioning everything she knew. She leaves it with an unshakable certainty. Whatever comes next, she'll face it head-on. The neon within her pulses in agreement. The real battle is just beginning. Chapter 17, Return to Shane. Seattle's neon-drenched skyline stretches before Abigail, a glittering maze of light and shadow. She crouches on the edge of a skyscraper, the wind whipping her hair as she surveys the cityscape below. Her target, the penthouse suite of the Aurora Tower, Shane's last known location. "You sure about this?" Mirage's voice crackles through her earpiece. After what happened with Fitch, Abigail's jaw tightens at the mention of her former mentor. "Shane's our last lead on Brent, and after what we learned about the occurrence, we need answers." Now, she can almost hear Mirage's frown. "Just be careful, okay? Shane's dangerous and she knows you're coming." "Counting on it," Abigail mutters. With a deep breath, she steps off the ledge. For a heart-stopping moment, she's in free fall. Then her powers kick in, transforming her into a streak of brilliant neon light. Abigail arcs through the night sky, a human comet racing between buildings. As she nears the Aurora Tower, movement catches her eye. Figures on the rooftop, heavily armed and alert. Shane's welcoming committee. Abigail grins. Time to make an entrance. She reforms mid-air, directly above the roof. As gravity takes hold, she channels her power downward. The resulting neon blast sends her attackers flying while cushioning her own landing. "Knock, knock!" Abigail calls out, neon energy crackling around her fists. More guards pour onto the roof, weapons raised. But Abigail is already moving, a blur of light and devastating precision. She dances between bullets, her attacks precise and non-lethal. These aren't her real enemies, after all, just obstacles. Within moments, the rooftop is clear. Abigail approaches the penthouse's glass doors, her reflection shimmering with residual energy. Inside, Shane waits, a glass of whiskey in hand and a sardonic smile on her face. "Took you long enough," Shane drawls as Abigail enters. "I was beginning to think you'd forgotten about little old me." Abigail's eyes narrow. "Where's Brent?" Shane tisks, shaking her head. "Still so focused on your brother. Don't you see the bigger picture yet, Fetch? This is about so much more than one insignificant human. He's not insignificant to me, Abigail growls, neon flaring around her hands. Last chance, Shane? Where is he? For a moment, something like regret flashes across Shane's face. Then her expression hardens. I'm afraid I can't tell you that, but I can show you something far more valuable. She moves to a sleek computer terminal, fingers flying across the keyboard. A holographic display springs to life, filling the room with ghostly blue light. Abigail's breath catches. It's a map of the city overlaid with pulsing points of energy. Conduit signatures. Beautiful, isn't it? Shane murmurs. Every conduit in Seattle tracked in real time. And this. She zooms in on one particular signature, blindingly bright compared to the others.
This is you, Fetch.
The culmination of decades of research and planning. Abigail's mind reels. What are you talking about? Shane turns to face her, eyes glinting with a mixture of ambition and something darker. Your parents weren't just researchers, Abigail, they were visionaries. They saw the potential in conduit genetics, the possibility of creating something more. You are their legacy, the bridge between human and conduit, with the potential to become something beyond both. The revelation hits Abigail like a physical blow. You're lying, she whispers, but deep down she knows it's true. It explains so much, her unique powers, the occurrence's obsession with her. Shane steps closer, her voice low and persuasive. Join us, Abigail. With your abilities we can usher in a new age. No more hiding, no more fear. Conduits taking their rightful place as the next step in human evolution. For a moment, Abigail wavers. The promise of answers, of purpose, of an end to the constant running. It's tempting, so tempting. But then she thinks of Brent, of the conduits in Haven looking to her for hope, of all the lives destroyed by the occurrence's machinations. No, she says, her voice steady and sure. Whatever I am, whatever I might become, it won't be as your weapon. Shane's expression hardens. I was afraid you'd say that. What happens next is a blur of motion. Shane activates some kind of personal shield, deflecting Abigail's instinctive neon blast. The older woman dives for a hidden panel, revealing a sleek escape pod. If you won't join us willingly, Shane calls out as the pod's door begins to close, then we'll just have to do this the hard way. Abigail launches herself forward, but she's too late. The pod detaches from the building, rocketing into the night sky. Without hesitation, Abigail gives chase. She becomes pure light, streaking after Shane's escape vehicle. What follows is a heart-stopping pursuit across Seattle's skyline. Shane's pod weaves between skyscrapers, its advanced tech allowing for impossible maneuvers, but Abigail is right on her tail, her mastery over her powers allowing her to keep pace. They race past neon-lit billboards, through narrow alleys, and over rain-slicked rooftops. Abigail pushes her abilities to the limit, using the city's ambient light to fuel her pursuit. She bounces off buildings, phases through obstacles, and leaves trails of dazzling energy in her wake. Finally, Shane makes a mistake. A too-sharp turn sends her pod clipping the edge of a building. It spirals out of control, crash-landing on the roof of the Space Needle. Abigail reforms beside the smoking wreckage, panting heavily. Shane crawls from the debris, battered but still defiant. It's over, Shane, Abigail says, neon energy pulsing around her. No more running. Tell me where Brent is. Shane laughs, a harsh, bitter sound. Oh, Abigail, it's far from over. She pulls out a small device, thumb, hovering over a button. Your brother is safe for now. He's insurance, you see. Insurance that you'll come to us when the time is right. What are you talking about? Abigail demands. Shane's smile is all teeth. The occurrence has big plans, Fetch. Plans that are already in motion. And you're the key to it all. When the time comes, you'll have a choice to make. Your brother's life, or the fate of every conduit in the city. Before Abigail can respond, Shane presses the button. A blinding flash of light erupts, and when Abigail's vision clears, Shane is gone, teleported away by some hidden tech. As sirens wail in the distance and the enormity of Shane's words sinks in, Abigail knows the endgame is approaching. The partial truths Shane revealed have only deepened the mystery, raising the stakes to unimaginable heights. Abigail looks out over the city, her city, pulsing with neon life. Whatever the occurrence has planned, whatever impossible choice lies ahead, she'll face it. For Brent, for the conduits counting on her, for the legacy her parents left behind. The neon within her surges, stronger and more in tune with her will than ever before. Abigail Walker has come into her own, no longer running, no longer hiding. It's time to take the fight to the occurrence, whatever the cost.
Chapter 18, The Occurrence Unveiled.
The subterranean corridors of Haven hum with nervous energy. Conduits of all types gather in small groups, their whispered conversations a backdrop to the tension that hangs in the air. At the center of it all stands Abigail, her face illuminated by the soft glow of a holographic display. "Are you sure about this?" Nexus asks, his weathered face creased with concern. "Once we access these files, there's no going back." Abigail nods, her jaw set with determination. "We need answers. Whatever the occurrence is planning, it's big. And it's happening soon." With a deep breath, she plugs in the drive she took from Shane's penthouse. The holographic display flickers, then explodes into a web of interconnected data points. Documents, images, and video files swirl around them, a dizzying array of information. "My God," Mirage breathes, her form shimmering with tension. "It's all here. The origin of conduits, the occurrences, experiments, everything." As they dig deeper into the files, a chilling picture begins to emerge. The occurrence wasn't just a shadowy organization, it was the driving force behind the emergence of conduits in the first place. "Project Daybreak," Abigail reads aloud, her voice tight. "An initiative to unlock human potential through genetic manipulation and exposure to exotic energies." Images flash across the display, laboratories filled with strange equipment, test subjects undergoing painful transformations, and at the center of it all, a familiar face. "Mom," Abigail whispers, her heart clenching. The woman in the photo looks younger, but it's unmistakably Abigail's mother. She stands beside a complex machine, her lab coat bearing the occurrence's logo. "Your parents were key researchers," Nexus explains gently. "They believed they were working towards human advancement, pushing the boundaries of what was possible." Abigail's mind reels. "But something went wrong, didn't it?" Nexus nods grimly. "The initial trials were catastrophic. Uncontrolled activations, subjects driven mad by their newfound powers. Your parents wanted to shut it down, but the occurrence had other plans. The event," Mirage says, realization dawning, "it wasn't an accident." "No," Nexus confirms, "it was a deliberate release of the energy your parents had harnessed. The occurrence saw an opportunity to create chaos, to shape the world in their image." Abigail's hands clench into fists, neon energy crackling between her fingers. "And my parents. They tried to stop it," Nexus says softly, "but they were too late. The occurrence erased their memories, hid them away. But not before. Not before they did something to me," Abigail finishes, the truth settling over her like a weight. "They knew what was coming, so they tried to protect me the only way they could." She thinks of her unique powers, the way the neon responds to her in ways no other conduit can match. It wasn't just chance or genetics, it was a deliberate act of love and desperation by parents trying to give their child a fighting chance in a world about to be turned upside down. As the full scope of the occurrence's plans unfolds before them, Abigail feels a mix of horror and resolve. They're not just trying to control conduits, they're trying to trigger a second event, one that would activate latent conduit genes in a significant portion of the population. "They want to remake the world," Mirage says, her voice hushed, "with them in control of who gets powers and who doesn't. And they need you to do it," Nexus adds, looking at Abigail. "Your unique genetic structure, your connection to the original Project Daybreak. You're the key to stabilizing the process." Abigail's mind races. It all makes sense now, why they took Brent, why they've been pushing her to unlock more of her potential. She's not just a weapon to them, she's the linchpin of their entire plan. As if on cue, a new file pops up on the display. It's a video message, addressed directly to Abigail. With trembling fingers, she presses play.
Shane's face fills the screen, her expression a mix of triumph and what might almost be regret.
"Hello, Fetch," she says. "If you're seeing this, then you've finally uncovered the truth. Bravo. But I'm afraid you're too late to stop what's coming. In 24 hours, Project Daybreak will reach its culmination. A new world is about to be born. Shane's image is replaced by a map of Seattle with a pulsing red dot at its center. This is where it all began, and this is where it will end. Come alone, or your brother dies. It's time to fulfill your destiny, Abigail. One way or another." The video cuts out, leaving the room in stunned silence. Abigail's mind whirls with the impossible choice before her. Go alone, potentially sacrificing herself and allowing the occurrence to reshape the world. Or risk Brent's life by bringing help, exposing the truth, but possibly losing the last family she has left. "Abby," Mirage says softly, placing a hand on her shoulder, "whatever you decide, we're with you. You don't have to do this alone." Nexus nods in agreement. "The conduits of Haven stand ready. This fight is all of ours now."
Abigail looks around the room at the faces of those who have become her new family.
She thinks of Brent, of her parents' sacrifice, of all the innocent lives hanging in the balance. In that moment, something crystallizes within her. The neon pulses, not just with power, but with purpose. "No," she says, her voice steady and sure. "I won't choose. We're going to save Brent and stop the occurrence, whatever it takes." A plan begins to form in her mind, bold and dangerous. It will require every ounce of skill and power she's developed, and trust in the allies she's made along the way. As Haven erupts into a flurry of activity, conduits preparing for battle, plans being drawn up, weapons and gear distributed, Abigail stands at the center of it all. She is no longer just Fetch, the scared girl running from her powers. She is Abigail Walker, heir to Project Daybreak, protector of conduits, and the occurrence's worst nightmare. The neon within her surges, stronger and more focused than ever before. In 24 hours, the fate of Seattle, and possibly the world, will be decided. Abigail Walker intends to be ready. Chapter 19. Assault on the Docks. The Seattle waterfront looms before them, a maze of shipping containers and warehouses shrouded in pre-dawn mist. Abigail crouches atop a crane, surveying the battlefield to come. Behind her, the combined forces of Haven's conduits and a surprising contingent of DUP defectors wait for her signal. "Remind me again why we're trusting the people who've been hunting us," Mirage mutters, her form shimmering with nervous energy. Abigail's lips quirk in a grim smile. "The enemy of my enemy, right? Besides, Fitch's betrayal shook a lot of them. They want to make things right." Her earpiece crackles to life. "Team Alpha in position," comes the hushed report. "Beta and Gamma squads ready on your mark." Abigail takes a deep breath, centering herself. The neon within her pulses, eager for release. "Remember the plan," she says to her assembled forces. "Our priority is rescuing the captive conduits. The occurrence cannot be allowed to use them for Project Daybreak. And Brent," her voice catches for a moment. "Finding my brother is secondary to stopping their plans. Understood?" A chorus of affirmatives fills the comm channel. Abigail nods, steeling herself for what's to come. "All right then, let's crash this party." With that, she leaps from the crane, her body dissolving into brilliant neon light. As she streaks towards the occurrence's fortified compound, all hell breaks loose. Haven conduits emerge from hiding spots throughout the docks, their diverse powers creating a dazzling spectacle. Ice bridges form between shipping containers, allowing allies to advance. Waves of fire and gusts of wind batter enemy positions. The ground itself seems to come alive, concrete barriers erupting to provide cover. The occurrence's forces respond with equal ferocity. Enhanced soldiers wielding advanced weaponry pour from the warehouses. Among them are conduits loyal to the occurrence, their powers twisted and amplified by cruel experimentation. Abigail reforms in the heart of the battle, immediately surrounded by enemies. She moves like lightning, each strike precise and devastating. Neon blasts send soldiers flying while more focused beams short out their high-tech gear. Mirage, she calls out. Now, her shape-shifting ally springs into action, creating dozens of illusory duplicates of Abigail. The battlefield erupts into chaos as the occurrence's forces struggle to identify the real threat. Taking advantage of the confusion, Abigail makes a break for the main warehouse. Intelligence suggests this is where the captive conduits are being held. As she approaches, a massive figure steps into her path. "Well, well," a familiar voice rumbles. "If it isn't little Fetch, all grown up." Abigail skids to a halt, her eyes widening in recognition. Augustine, the former head of the DUP, stands before her, but she's changed. Her body is a hybrid of flesh and living concrete, pulsing with unnatural energy. "What have they done to you?" Abigail breathes. Augustine's laugh is bitter. "They showed me the truth, the futility of containing conduits. The only way forward is to control the change, to decide who is worthy of power." She raises her arms, and the very ground beneath Abigail's feet comes alive. Concrete tendrils whip towards her, forcing Abigail into a desperate dance of evasion. "I don't want to fight you," Abigail shouts, dodging another attack. "Then surrender," Augustine replies coldly. "Join us. It's what you were made for, after all." Abigail grits her teeth, neon energy surging within her. "I decide what I was made for." What follows is a clash of titanic proportions. Augustine's mastery over concrete meets Abigail's neon abilities in a spectacular display. The docks become their arena, shipping containers tossed about like toys, the ground repeatedly shattered and reformed. As they battle, Abigail catches glimpses of the larger conflict raging around them. Haven conduits fighting side by side with DUP defectors, former enemies united against a common threat. She sees Nexus coordinating their efforts, his ability to enhance other conduits' powers turning the tide in crucial moments. Finally, Abigail spots an opening. As Augustine summons a massive wave of concrete, Abigail becomes pure light. She streaks through the attack, reforming inches from her opponent. Before Augustine can react, Abigail places her hands on the woman's chest and releases a focused burst of neon energy. Augustine screams, the concrete parts of her body cracking and falling away. She collapses to her knees, her powers neutralized. "It's over," Abigail pants, exhausted but victorious. Augustine looks up at her, and for a moment Abigail sees a flicker of the woman she once was. "You have no idea what's coming," she whispers. Before Abigail can respond, an explosion rocks the warehouse behind them. The doors burst open, and a stream of dazed, weakened conduits stumbles out. Among them, supporting an injured woman, is a familiar face. "Brent!" Abigail cries, her heart leaping. Her brother looks up, his eyes widening in recognition. "Abby!" Abigail races towards him, all thoughts of the battle momentarily forgotten. As she reaches Brent, throwing her arms around him in a desperate embrace, she allows herself a moment of pure relief. But their reunion is short-lived. A slow clap echoes across the battlefield, amplified by hidden speakers. Shane's voice, smug and triumphant, fills the air. "Bravo, Fetch, truly impressive, but I'm afraid you're too late. While you've been fighting this little skirmish, Project Daybreak has already begun. In 1 hour, Seattle will be ground zero for the next stage of human evolution. And you, my dear, are going to help us usher it in, whether you want to or not." As if on cue, a massive holographic countdown appears in the sky above the city. 9:59, 9:58, 9:57. Abigail looks at Brent, then at the rescued conduits, then at her allies still locked in battle across the docks. The weight of what's to come settles over her. What do we do now? Brent asks, his voice tight with fear and exhaustion. Abigail squares her shoulders, her resolve hardening. We finish this, once and for all. As dawn breaks over Seattle, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, Abigail Walker prepares for the final battle. The fate of the city, and perhaps the world, hangs in the balance. The neon within her pulses stronger and more focused than ever before. Whatever the occurrence has planned, whatever impossible choice lies ahead, she'll face it. For Brent. For her parents. For every conduit and human caught in this web of conspiracy and power. The endgame approaches, and Abigail Walker intends to write its conclusion. Chapter 20, Brother's Keeper. The makeshift infirmary in Haven's underground base hums with frantic activity. Injured conduits from the docks battle lie on cots, their wounds being tended to by those with healing abilities. But Abigail has eyes only for one person. Brent sits on the edge of a bed, his face pale and drawn. As Abigail approaches, he looks up, a mix of emotions flashing across his features, relief, fear, and something harder to define. "Hey, sis," he says weakly, attempting a smile. "Nice light show out there." Abigail's laugh comes out as a choked sob. She throws her arms around him, holding on as if he might disappear again at any moment. "God, Brent, I thought I'd lost you." For a moment they simply cling to each other, the chaos of the world outside fading away. But as Abigail pulls back, she notices Brent wince. "You're hurt," she says, her eyes narrowing with concern. Brent waves it off. "It's nothing, just a souvenir from my time with the occurrence." But Abigail isn't fooled. She can see the way he holds himself, the barely concealed pain in his eyes. "Let me see." Reluctantly, Brent lifts his shirt. Abigail's breath catches. A web of angry red scars crisscrosses his torso, centered around a pulsing, unnatural blue light embedded in his chest. "What did they do to you?" she whispers, horror and rage warring within her. Brent's laugh is bitter. "Turns out I'm not as immune to this conduit business as we thought. They were trying to activate latent abilities, using me as a test subject for their next phase." Abigail's mind reels. "You're a conduit, but how?" "Not exactly," Brent explains, his voice tight with pain. "More like a bridge. They called it Project Catalyst. Said I had the genetic potential to become a conduit, but also the ability to enhance the powers of others, especially yours." The implications hit Abigail like a physical blow. "That's why they took you. You weren't just bait. You're part of their plan." Brent nods grimly. "They want to use us together, Abby. My catalyst ability to amplify your powers, and then use that to trigger mass conduit activation across the city." Abigail sinks onto the bed beside him, her head spinning. "All this time I thought I was protecting you from my world. But you were always part of it." "Hey," Brent says softly, taking her hand. "This isn't your fault. None of it is." Abigail meets his gaze, tears stinging her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Brent. For everything. For dragging you into this life, for not being there when you needed me." "Stop," Brent cuts her off firmly. "You don't get to apologize for being who you are. You're my sister, Abby, conduit or not. That's never going to change." His words break something open inside her. All the fear, guilt, and pent-up emotion she's been carrying comes pouring out. Abigail sobs, letting herself be truly vulnerable for the first time in years. Brent holds her, his own eyes glistening. "I saw what you did out there," he says quietly. "How you led those people, how you fought. You're not just my little sister anymore. You're a hero, Abby." Abigail shakes her head. "I don't feel like a hero. I feel scared and angry and so damn tired." "That's what makes you human," Brent says with a small smile. Powers or not. They sit in silence for a moment, the weight of everything that's happened and everything still to come, settling over them. Finally, Abigail straightens, wiping her eyes. "We need to stop them, Brent. Whatever they're planning with Project Daybreak, it can't happen." But I don't know if I'm strong enough. Brent's expression hardens with resolve. Then we do it together, like we always have. As if in response to his words, the device in his chest pulses brightly. Brent gasps in pain, doubling over. "Brent!" Abigail cries, catching him as he slumps forward. "What's happening?" Through gritted teeth, Brent manages to speak. "It's activating the catalyst. I can feel it." Abigail's hands begin to glow, neon energy responding to Brent's condition. Where their skin touches, the light seems to intensify, growing brighter and more vibrant. "Oh my God!" Abigail breathes, understanding dawning. "This is what they wanted, the two of us, connected like this." Brent nods, his breathing laboured. "Abby, whatever happens, you can't let them use us. You have to stop Project Daybreak no matter the cost." "Don't talk like that," Abigail says fiercely. "We're both walking out of this, you hear me?" But even as she speaks, alarms begin to blare throughout the base. Mirage bursts into the infirmary, her eyes wide with panic. "Abby, it's starting. The occurrence. They've begun the final phase. The whole city's going crazy." Abigail looks at Brent, then back at Mirage. The weight of the impossible choice before her settles like lead in her stomach. Stay with Brent. Try to stabilize his condition, but risk the occurrence succeeding in their plans. Or leave him, possibly saving the city but abandoning her brother when he needs her most. As if reading her thoughts, Brent squeezes her hand. "Go," he says softly. "Save them. It's who you are." Tears sting Abigail's eyes, but she nods. With a final fierce hug, she stands. "Keep him safe," she tells Mirage, her voice brooking no argument. "Whatever it takes." As Abigail races out of the infirmary, her powers surging in response to the crisis, she makes a silent vow. She will stop the occurrence. She will save the city, and she will come back for Brent. The neon within her pulses stronger than ever before. Abigail Walker has found her purpose, her strength. It's time to finish this, once and for all. Chapter 21. Race Against Time. Seattle burns. From her vantage point atop the Space Needle, Abigail watches in horror as chaos engulfs the city. Pockets of uncontrolled conduit activations erupt across the skyline, raw power lashing out in bursts of flame, ice, and stranger energies. The occurrence's plan is in motion, and the clock is ticking. Her comm unit crackles to life. "Abby!" Mirage's voice is tense with panic. "Brent's condition is deteriorating. The doctors say without a stabilizing agent, he won't last the hour." Abigail's heart clenches. "What kind of stabilizing agent?" "There's a prototype at the DUP headquarters," Mirage explains quickly. "But Abby, the whole city's in lockdown. The chief of police has mobilized everything they've got. It's a war zone out there." Abigail's jaw sets with determination. "Then I'll just have to be faster than the war." Without another word, she leaps from the needle. For a heart-stopping moment, she's in free fall. Then her powers kick in, transforming her into a comet of brilliant neon light. Abigail streaks across the Seattle skyline, a dazzling blur weaving between skyscrapers. Below, the streets are chaos incarnate. Terrified civilians flee newly awakened conduits who can't control their powers. Dupe forces clash with occurrence operatives, their battle tearing up entire city blocks. As she nears the DUP headquarters, a new obstacle presents itself. A massive energy barrier shimmers around the building, impenetrable to normal means. Abigail doesn't slow down. Instead, she pushes her powers to the limit, vibrating her very molecules to match the frequency of the barrier. For a moment, it feels like she's being torn apart. Then she's through, reforming inside the perimeter with a gasp of pain and exhilaration. Alarms blare as she races through the facility. DUP soldiers move to intercept, but Abigail is beyond their ability to contain. She phases through walls, short-circuit security systems, and leaves a trail of stunned opponents in her wake. Finally, she reaches the high-security lab. The stabilizing agent, a glowing blue vial, sits tantalizingly close, but as Abigail reaches for it, A familiar voice stops her cold. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." Abigail turns slowly. The chief of police stands in the doorway, flanked by heavily armed officers. But something's wrong. The chief's eyes glow with an unnatural light, his skin seeming to shift and ripple. "You're not the chief," Abigail realizes aloud. The man's laugh is cold and distorted. "Perceptive. No, I'm something more, a gift from the occurrence. The next stage of evolution." As he speaks, his form begins to change. Limbs elongate, skin hardens into a chitinous shell. Within moments, Abigail faces a monstrous hybrid of man and insect, mandibles clicking menacingly. "Jesus," Abigail breathes, fighting down a wave of revulsion. "Is this what you want for everyone? To become this?" The creature that was once the chief lunges forward with inhuman speed. "What I want," it hisses, "is power, and the occurrence has promised it in abundance." What follows is a desperate battle in the confines of the lab. Abigail's neon abilities clash against the chief's grotesque new form. He's incredibly strong and fast, able to cling to walls and ceilings. His exoskeleton seems to resist her energy blasts. Abigail is forced to fight smarter, not harder. She uses her powers in increasingly creative ways, creating neon duplicates to confuse him, superheating the air to disorient his senses, even temporarily blinding him with precisely aimed light bursts. But time is running out. Every second spent fighting is a second Brent slips closer to death. In a moment of desperate inspiration, Abigail spots a canister of experimental coolant. With a well-aimed blast, she ruptures it, flooding the room with supercooled gas. The sudden temperature drop causes the chief's exoskeleton to contract painfully, leaving him vulnerable. Abigail doesn't hesitate. She unleashes a massive surge of neon energy, more power than she's ever channeled before. The chief's mutated form can't withstand it. With a horrific shriek, he collapses, his body reverting to human form. Panting heavily, Abigail retrieves the stabilizing agent, but as she turns to leave, the chief's words stop her. "You can't. Save them all," he wheezes, blood trickling from his mouth. "The change, it's already happening. All across the city. You'll have to choose who lives, who dies." Abigail's fist clenches around the vial. "I choose hope," she says firmly. "I choose to believe we can stop this." With that, she races out of the facility, becoming light once more. The journey back to Haven is a blur of sensation, the wind rushing past, the city's chaos below, the weight of the precious vial in her hand. She bursts into the infirmary, skidding to a halt beside Brent's bed. He's pale, barely breathing, the device in his chest pulsing erratically. "I've got it," Abigail pants, holding out the vial to the Haven doctors. "Please save him." As they work to administer the agent, Abigail clasps Brent's hand tightly. "Hold on," she whispers fiercely. "Just hold on a little longer. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happens." Then Brent gasps, his eyes flying open. The device in his chest stabilizes, its glow steady and strong. "Abby," he croaks, squeezing her hand weakly. Abigail's laugh is half-sob. "Hey there, big brother. Thought you could check out on me, huh?" Before Brent can respond, Mirage bursts into the room. "Abby! We've got a problem. The occurrence. They're making their final move. They're gathering at Pioneer Square. Whatever they're planning, it's happening now." Abigail looks at Brent, torn between staying with him and facing the threat. But Brent's eyes are clear and determined. "Go," he says softly. "Finish this. I'll be right behind you." With a nod, Abigail stands. As she moves to leave, Brent catches her wrist. The moment their skin touches, Abigail feels a surge of power unlike anything she's experienced before. The neon within her sings, amplified by Brent's catalyst ability. "Together," Brent says, his voice stronger. "Like we promised." Abigail nods, a fierce grin spreading across her face. Together. As she races out of Haven, her powers surging with newfound strength, Abigail knows the final battle is at hand. The occurrence, Shane, the fate of Seattle and perhaps the world, it all comes down to this. The neon pulses within her, brighter than ever before. Abigail Walker, once a scared girl running from her powers, now stands as the last hope for conduits and humans alike. It's time to rewrite destiny. Chapter 22, The Pioneer Building. Seattle's night sky blazes with unnatural light. The occurrence's device, a massive construct of alien technology and corrupted conduit energy, pulses atop the Pioneer Building. Its tendrils of power snake through the city, triggering chaotic conduit awakenings and threatening to reshape the very fabric of reality. Abigail streaks towards the epicenter, a comet of brilliant neon cutting through the chaos. The combined power of her and Brent's abilities surges within her, raw potential begging for release. As she nears the Pioneer Building, a familiar figure comes into view. Shane stands at the device's control panel, her face illuminated by its ethereal glow. She turns as Abigail lands on the rooftop, a sardonic smile playing on her lips. "Right on time, Fetch," Shane calls out over the howling wind. "Come to witness the dawn of a new era." Abigail's hands flare with neon energy. "I've come to stop you. This ends now, Shane." Shane's laugh is bitter. "Stop me? Oh, Abigail, you're here to fulfill your destiny, to become the key that unlocks humanity's true potential." With a gesture, Shane activates a secondary system. The rooftop shimmers as a containment field springs to life, trapping them both. "No more running," Shane says, her voice hardening. "It's time to embrace what you are." Abigail doesn't waste words. She launches into action, neon blasts arcing towards Shane. But her opponent is prepared. Shane unveils powers of her own, a swirling vortex of shadow and light that deflects Abigail's attacks. Surprised, Shane taunts as they clash. "The occurrence has granted me a fraction of what you'll soon unleash." Imagine it, Abigail, a world where everyone has the power to shape their own destiny. The battle rages across the rooftop, a dazzling display of light and shadow against the Seattle skyline. Abigail pushes her abilities to the limit, drawing on every technique she's learned. She becomes a blur of motion, phasing through Shane's attacks and retaliating with precision strikes. But Shane is a formidable opponent. Her hybrid powers allow her to counter Abigail's every move, the two of them locked in a deadly dance atop the Pioneer Building. As they fight, Shane continues her monologue, her words designed to shake Abigail's resolve. "Think of your parents, Abigail. They gave everything to make this moment possible, to create you." Abigail grits her teeth, memories of her parents flashing through her mind. "They tried to stop this, to protect me from becoming your weapon." Shane's smile is cruel. "And look how well that turned out. Face it, Fetch, you were born for this. It's in your very DNA." The battle intensifies, their powers clashing in spectacular bursts of energy. The containment field wavers under the onslaught, threatening to collapse and release the building tension across the city. In a moment of vulnerability, Shane manages to grab Abigail, their faces inches apart. "I can give you everything," Shane hisses. "Power beyond imagination. The ability to reshape the world as you see fit, to protect those you love. All you have to do is let go. Embrace your true nature." For a heartbeat, Abigail wavers. The promise of that power, the ability to ensure no one ever hurts her or Brent again. It's tempting, so tempting. But then she thinks of Haven, of the conduits and humans fighting side by side below, of Brent, who never gave up on her, of her parents, who sacrificed everything to give her a choice. "My nature," Abigail says, her voice steady, "is my own to decide." With a surge of power, she breaks free of Shane's grip. Neon energy explodes outward, shattering the containment field and sending Shane stumbling back. Abigail presses her advantage, her attacks coming faster and more furiously than ever before. Shane is forced on the defensive, her confident smirk replaced by a look of growing fear. "You don't get to decide who I am," Abigail shouts, punctuating each word with a blast of power. "Not you, Not the occurrence, not anyone. With a final, massive surge of energy, Abigail breaks through Shane's defenses. The older woman is thrown back, crashing into the occurrence's device. Sparks fly as delicate systems short out, the machine's ominous hum faltering. Shane struggles to her feet, blood trickling from a cut above her eye. For the first time, real doubt creeps into her expression. "What are you doing?" she asks, her voice shaking. "You'll destroy everything we've worked for." Abigail advances, neon light pulsing around her fists. "No," she says firmly. "I'm saving everything that matters." The moment stretches between them, charged with possibility. Abigail could end it all right now. One blast and Shane would be gone. The architect of so much pain and suffering erased in an instant. But as she looks at Shane, battered, desperate, and ultimately human, Abigail makes her choice. "It's over, Shane," she says, powering down her neon. "You've lost. But you don't have to die. Help me shut this thing down, and you can still make things right." Shane's laugh is hollow. "And then what? Prison. A life in a duck cage." "Justice," Abigail replies. "A chance to face what you've done. To find redemption, if you're willing to work for it." For a long moment, Shane is silent. Then slowly she nods. "You really are something special, Fetch. Not for your powers, but for this." She taps her chest right over her heart. "I hope the world's ready for it." Together they approach the device's control panel. As they work to shut it down, the sky above Seattle begins to clear. The chaotic energy dissipates, leaving a city battered but unbroken. As the last of the machine's lights flicker out, Abigail feels a wave of exhaustion wash over her. It's done. The occurrence's plans, the threat to the city, the weight of destiny she's carried for so long, it's finally over. She looks out over Seattle, the first hints of dawn painting the sky in soft pinks and golds. In the streets below, she can see conduits and humans emerging from hiding, coming together to assess the damage and begin the process of healing. A hand on her shoulder makes her turn. Brent stands there, supported by Mirage, his face pale but his eyes shining with pride. "You did it, Abby," he says softly. "You saved us all." Abigail pulls him into a fierce hug, tears stinging her eyes. As they embrace, she feels the neon within her pulse in tune with Brent's catalyst ability, but it's different now. Not a weapon or a burden, but a gift, a responsibility. As sirens wail in the distance and the sun crests the horizon, Abigail knows her journey is far from over. There will be questions to answer, a city to rebuild, a new balance to strike between conduits and humans. But for now, standing atop the Pioneer building with her brother by her side and her chosen family gathering around her, Abigail Walker feels something she hasn't experienced in a very long time. Hope. The neon light within her shines brighter than ever, not with the promise of destruction, but of protection, of healing, of a future where her powers are a force for good, a future she's finally ready to embrace. Chapter 23. Light in the Darkness. The sun rises over Seattle, its warm light revealing a city forever changed. From her perch atop the Space Needle, Abigail watches as the first tentative signs of normalcy return to the streets below. Emergency vehicles weave through debris-strewn roads, their sirens a constant reminder of the night's chaos. But alongside them, she sees something else, conduits and humans working together, clearing rubble and helping the injured. A new day has dawned in more ways than one. "Penny for your thoughts." Abigail turns to see Brent approaching, moving slowly but steadily. The device in his chest still pulses with energy, but its glow has softened, no longer a painful reminder of captivity, but a symbol of shared survival. "Just taking it all in," Abigail replies, making room for him to join her. "Hard to believe it's really over." Brent's laugh is gentle. "Is it? Seems to me like this is just the beginning." As they look out over the city together, Abigail feels the weight of everything that's happened settle over her. The battles fought, the truths uncovered, the choices made, it all seems almost too much to process. "What happens now?" she asks, voicing the question that's been nagging at her since the dust settled on Pioneer Square. Brent is quiet for a moment, considering. That's up to us, I think. All of us. He gestures to the city below. Conduits. Humans. We're all in uncharted territory now. Abigail nods, her mind racing with possibilities and concerns. The DUP is in shambles. The occurrence's leadership is captured or on the run. But there are still so many people out there with powers they don't understand, scared and alone. Sounds like they could use a guide, Brent says, a hint of pride in his voice. Someone who's been there, who can show them it's possible to use these abilities for good. Abigail feels a flutter of nervousness in her stomach. You think that could be me? Brent turns to face her fully, his expression serious. Abby, I've watched you grow from a scared kid running from her powers into someone who was willing to risk everything to save a city full of strangers. If anyone can lead the way forward, it's you. His words fill Abigail with a warmth that has nothing to do with her neon abilities. But doubt still lingers. What about you, she asks. After everything you've been through because of me, because of these powers? Brent cuts her off with a gentle hand on her shoulder. Hey, none of that was your fault. And in case you've forgotten, I've got a stake in this brave new world too. He taps the device in his chest. We're in this together, remember? Abigail's smile is watery but genuine. Together, she agrees. As if on cue, her phone buzzes with an incoming call. It's Mirage, her voice tense with barely contained excitement. Abby, you need to get down here. The mayor's making an announcement about the conduit situation and, well, you're going to want to hear this in person. Within minutes, Abigail and Brent are on the ground, pushing through a crowd gathered in front of City Hall. The mayor stands at a podium, flanked by a mixture of human officials and, surprisingly, conduits, including some familiar faces from Haven. And so, the mayor is saying as they arrive, in light of recent events, we are announcing the formation of a new task force. The Conduit Integration and Support Team will work to help those with newfound abilities adjust to their powers, while also addressing the concerns of the non-powered community. This team will be led by someone who has demonstrated extraordinary courage and leadership in the face of unprecedented challenges. The mayor's eyes scan the crowd, landing on Abigail. Ms. Walker, would you please join me on stage? Abigail freezes, momentarily overwhelmed. But Brent's gentle push and the encouraging nods from her conduit allies spur her forward. As she takes her place beside the mayor, she feels the eyes of the entire city upon her. Abigail Walker has shown us that conduit abilities can be a force for good, the mayor continues. Her actions in stopping the occurrence and saving countless lives have earned her not just our gratitude, but our trust. Ms. Walker, will you accept this position and help lead Seattle into a new era of cooperation between conduits and non-conduits alike? For a moment, Abigail is transported back to that scared girl hiding in alleys, terrified of her own power. She thinks of all the mistakes made, the pain endured, the hard-won lessons learned. But she also thinks of the lives saved, the bonds forged, and the potential for a better future. With a deep breath, she steps up to the microphone. I'm no politician, she begins, her voice steady despite her nerves. I'm not perfect and I don't have all the answers. But I do know what it's like to be afraid of your own abilities, to feel alone and misunderstood. If I can help even one person avoid that struggle, then yes, I accept. The crowd erupts in applause, a mixture of hope and lingering apprehension clear on their faces. As Abigail shakes hands with the mayor and fields questions from reporters, she catches Brent's eye in the crowd. His proud smile tells her everything she needs to know. Later, as the siblings walk through a park slowly coming back to life, Abigail finally allows herself to relax. So, she says, bumping Brent's shoulder playfully. Looks like we're sticking around Seattle for a while. You okay with that? Brent's grin is answer enough, but he adds, Are you kidding? Someone's got to keep you out of trouble, little sister. Besides, he gestures to a group of young conduits, cautiously practicing their abilities under the watchful eye of a Haven mentor. I think this city needs us. Both of us. Abigail nods, a sense of purpose settling over her. There's still so much work to be done, helping new conduits, rebuilding trust with the human population, rooting out the last vestiges of the occurrence's influence. But for the first time in years, she's not facing these challenges alone. As the sun sets over Seattle, bathing the city in a warm glow, Abigail feels the neon energy within her pulse in harmony with Brent's catalyst ability. It's no longer a burden or a weapon, but a gift, a responsibility, a light in the darkness showing the way forward. Abigail Walker, once a fugitive, now stands as a beacon of hope for conduits and humans alike. And whatever challenges the future holds, she's ready to face them. Together. Chapter 24. New Dawn. 3 months after the fall of the occurrence, Seattle pulses with a new energy. The scars of battle are still visible, scaffolding embraces damaged buildings, and certain neighborhoods remain cordoned off for decontamination. But there's an undeniable sense of rebirth in the air, a city learning to reimagine itself. Abigail Walker stands atop the rebuilt DUP headquarters, now repurposed as the central office for the Conduit Integration and Support Team, SIST. The irony isn't lost on her. The very organization that once hunted her now serves as a beacon of hope for conduits across the city. Ms. Walker. A young aide approaches, tablet in hand. The mayor is ready for your weekly briefing. Abigail nods, taking a final glance at the cityscape before following the aide inside. As they walk, she catches glimpses of the building's new purpose in action. A training room where veteran conduits teach newcomers to control their abilities. A medical wing staffed by both human doctors and conduits with healing powers. A bustling command center coordinating responses to conduit-related emergencies across Seattle. In the conference room, Abigail finds not just the mayor, but representatives from law enforcement, education, and various community organizations. It's a far cry from the days of operating in shadows and back alleys. "Abigail?" the mayor greets her warmly. "What's the latest?" Taking her seat, Abigail begins her report. "We've made significant progress in identifying and reaching out to new conduits. Our support groups are at capacity, but we're training more facilitators to meet demand. There's been a 30% decrease in incidents of uncontrolled power manifestation compared to last month," the police chief chimes in, "and a corresponding drop in anti-conduit hate crimes. Your public outreach is making a difference." Abigail allows herself a small smile. It hasn't been easy, but they're making headway. "We're also seeing increased interest in our conduit human partnership programs. More businesses are recognizing the potential benefits of conduit employees when properly trained and supported." The meeting continues, a mix of encouraging progress reports and frank discussions of ongoing challenges. There are still those who fear conduits, still pockets of unrest and discrimination, but step by step, day by day, they're building a new normal. As the meeting wraps up, the mayor pulls Abigail aside. "There's something else we need to discuss," she says, her expression serious. "We've received intelligence about a group of occurrence loyalists operating out of Vancouver. They may be attempting to recreate Project Daybreak." Abigail's jaw tightens. "I thought we'd rooted out the last of them." The mayor shakes her head. "Evil has a way of lingering. We need someone to investigate, someone with the power and experience to handle whatever they might encounter." "I'll go," Abigail says without hesitation. "Are you sure? You've taken on so much responsibility here already." Abigail's smile is determined. "This is my responsibility too. I'll assemble a team, leave Mirage in charge of day-to-day operations. We can't let the occurrence's ideology spread." The mayor nods, a mixture of relief and admiration in her eyes. "Thank you, Abigail. Seattle is lucky to have you." As Abigail leaves the building, her mind already racing with plans for the Vancouver mission, she's struck by how much has changed. Once she ran from her powers, from any hint of responsibility. Now she shoulders the weight willingly, knowing the difference she can make. Her phone buzzes, a text from Brent. "Fetch." Don't forget, you promised to help with the youth outreach program tonight. These kids are dying to meet the famous neon conduit. Abigail grins. Some things, thankfully, remain constant. Her brother, always there to keep her grounded, to remind her of the personal connections that make all of this worth fighting for. That evening, after a lively Kunda session with a group of teenage conduits and more than a few excited demonstrations of her neon abilities, Abigail finds Brent waiting for her outside the community centre. "Nice work in there, sis," he says, falling into step beside her. "You're a natural with the kids." Abigail snorts, says the guy who had them eating out of his hand with those cheesy jokes. They walk in comfortable silence for a while, eventually finding themselves in a small park overlooking the city. The Seattle skyline glitters before them, neon signs and conduit-powered light displays creating a dazzling tapestry against the night sky. "Remember when we used to hide in places like this?" Brent asks softly. "Always looking over our shoulders, never feeling safe." Abigail nods, the memories bittersweet. "We've come a long way." "You've come a long way," Brent corrects her, pride evident in his voice. "Fetch the fugitive to Abigail Walker, conduit leader and protector of Seattle. Mom and Dad would be so proud." Abigail feels a lump form in her throat. "You think so?" "I know so." Brent's hand finds hers, giving it a gentle squeeze. "I know I am." As they stand there, looking out over the city they once feared and now call home, Abigail feels a sense of peace she never thought possible. The neon energy within her pulses gently, no longer a curse, but a gift, a tool to protect, to heal, to build a better future. "So," Brent says after a while, a hint of mischief in his tone, "I hear there might be a trip to Vancouver in your future. Need a catalyst to watch your back." Abigail grins. "Wouldn't have it any other way, big brother." As the first light of dawn begins to paint the sky, Abigail and Brent Walker stand side by side, ready to face whatever challenges the new day might bring. They've weathered storms, confronted their pasts, and emerged stronger for it. Seattle stretches before them, a city of light and shadow, of conduits and humans learning to coexist. And at its heart, a beacon of neon energy, a promise of protection and hope. Abigail Walker, once a scared girl running from her powers, now stands tall as a guardian of this brave new world. With her brother by her side and a city depending on her, she faces the future with determination and purpose. The dawn of a new era has arrived, and Fetch is ready to light the way. The end.